Welcome to the Shun Podcast, where we expose religions that use shunning as a tool to control people. Some quick business before we get started. As you know by now, I offer one-on-one coaching to help people recover from life in these high control groups. I work to help people grieve the past, find themselves, and then find the life that they actually want, not just the one they were given. I'm actually offering something special, so if you want to work with me, now would be a good time. I'm actually offering pay what you want pricing. That's not something you see very often, but I want to work with more people. I want to try to help more people. So, when you look at it, traditional therapy locally is usually, $100 plus per session. Online therapy is usually $80 or more. I typically charge $50 for coaching, which most people find reasonable, but I'm actually letting you decide the price. So the minimum is actually $20, but you decide from there. And by doing so, I'm hoping that I can help more people. So if you're feeling unhappy or stuck, send me an email at shunnedpodcast@gmail.com or reach out through any of the websites that I have, whether it's shunnedpodcast.com, xjwhelp.com, or whatever. And let's start working together. We already lost so much time in these groups. You can certainly do some healing alone, of course. But, when we work together on things, we can often heal a lot faster. And, we can also process things together, challenge perspectives, get new tools, find ways of different ways of looking at things, find acceptance, kind of go through this grieving process together. And in the end, more and more people have been reaching out for help, and seeing people that I work with actually start to find their voice, to make big changes in their lives, to be who they've wanted to be, or to just be proud of who they are. That's the best feeling in the world. Speaking of seeing people become who they are, or be able to speak to who they've been, today we actually have another brave person that's reached out to tell their story as part of the process of healing. It can be very cathartic to share your story with other people, to feel seen, heard, validated. So let's go on a journey with today's guest. As you listen, look for the lessons, look for the ways that maybe your story relates, and maybe you can learn about what has worked for this person, or maybe what hasn't. Maybe it's something that you can pull into your own life. If you were never involved in these groups, I get emails from people that just listen because they find these stories interesting or they find them inspiring. So please help spread the word. These aren't just cult stories. These are human stories. So many of the things that were experienced by the guests of this show are found in other areas of life. So share these episodes and let's help shine a light on the human experience. What's really going on in this world? You never know who it might help. So without further ado, let's go ahead and meet today's guest.
My name is Stephanie. I am 43 years old. I was a Jehovah's Witness, and I am shunned.
All right, Stephanie. So how'd you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place?
I was born into the religion.
Okay. So you being born in, obviously your parents are witnesses. Does this go back very far in your family?
My dad actually came in when he was out of high school and he was going to school, and somehow somebody came to him and he was concerned about actually being drafted into war. And so that's actually how he started his interaction with Jehovah's Witnesses. And he actually broke off an engagement with somebody and basically kind of broke off from the rest of his family to become a Jehovah's Witness. And on my mom's side, it was her dad that somehow was introduced. I'm not exactly sure how, but her dad was. So then my mom's whole family was, as far as her siblings and her parents then.
It's interesting, the story about your dad. He had a vulnerability there. He was looking down the barrel of the draft, and that's oftentimes it's those kind of concerns that lead people to the organization. And then you have the interesting pattern whereby your dad breaks off ties with his family and even apparently a fiance. Those are things that I always like to point out the parallel with domestic abuse. A lot of times you see in a domestic abuse situation where someone is isolated from the people that they've always been around, their friends and family. And, Jehovah's Witnesses, when you become one or start getting interested in that, we were all kind of supposed to start distancing ourselves from those relationships that had meant something to us. And there's just an interesting dynamic there that really kind of leaves us isolated and vulnerable in another way, that makes us kind of stick to this new congregation or people that we're starting to be around. So it's just, I'm always curious. It's always interesting to see the dynamics that lead people or start families into the organization. Um, so
Yeah,
for your,
definitely.
yeah, it's not an isolated thing. It's a very common thing that happens. So with yourself, what was growing up in it, what was the worldview that you were given? How did you start seeing the people around you, or just life in general as a little kid?
Um, we we moved around a lot when I was a kid. Not so much like different states, but just different houses in the within the same area. We never had much money at all growing up, and I know my dad worked out of town a lot. He's in construction, and he would have to go like out of town for work. I remember missing my dad a lot, and just a bit of chaos um, in general with like moving. And we had, I don't know, the family is very dysfunctional. We had like an uncle that lived with us um, since I can remember, basically. And my mom didn't have a good relationship with her mom, and we lived with my grandpa and her for a while. And then my mom has two sisters that were disfellowshipped when we were very young. So it's very broken up. Um, yeah, and kind of just chaotic. I kind of felt like there was people coming into our lives and then they weren't in their lives. There were times where my mom would have some interaction with her sisters that were disfellowshipped, and then other times she wouldn't. Like, I remember a very fun time going to my aunt that is disfellowshipped, a cabin that she had, and we got to be with like our cousins and hang out, and like they lived on water and we all like went tubing and stuff. But then it was like, then, a little while later, we weren't talking to them again. It was just, I don't know, very strange like that. And yeah, so that was kind of hard. Like my uncle had lived with us for a long time, and then when he got married, him and his new wife actually even lived like on our property, like in a trailer for a while, but sometimes they would have to like live in the house. I think I just sort of always felt like, yeah, it was a lot of chaos, and maybe that I didn't have like my own space or anything that I could kind of depend on. But as I got older, there was a lot of like kids that were witnesses my age, and I had a couple close friends that I did stuff with or would go to her house a lot to like escape. And her dad was an elder, actually,
Oh,
and she wasn't far away, but I would say that a lot of childhood was very sheltered, and I just kept to, my group of witnesses, and I think everybody was like looking out for everybody else, so you couldn't ever really do much else. I feel like if you wanted to, but it was just never a thought. It was like, this is what you're supposed to do, and this is who you're supposed to hang around with, and I just never gave thought to like, I don't know, going to a football game on a Friday night, or of the schools, or we just did our own thing. all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, you kind of ride that momentum, don't you? You've got your JW friends, and you all just kind of do the same things together and stick together, and so you're so focused on that, you're not really thinking about the other things you could be doing.
Right. I mean, when I got into high school, I do remember, well, one thing I'll never forget is seeing like girls pregnant in high school, and I'm like, how did that happen? Like, what? Like, where were you? How could this even be like a possibility? And how does this work? And like, what? I don't get it. Like, it was very just like, I don't know. Not that I don't know that I didn't understand what sex was and whatever, but it was like, it wasn't even a thought in my mind.
Yeah.
And I think my mom was so like controlling and restrictive, and I just always felt like everyone knew what you were doing, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing, but I'm just like, how do you even get in a situation where you would like have an opportunity to do that? I'm just like, oh, it's just funny.
It's a different life to have the freedom to make bad choices. Sometimes when you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses, though, that control that's being exerted over you, although true, it sometimes does keep you out of some bad situations. It also keeps you in a bad situation, because being one of Jehovah's Witnesses comes with its own issues, and there's a lot of control being exerted there that keeps you stuck. So you kind of mentioned like the childhood at home being very chaotic. I can't remember if you said, because there were so many people involved just in a short period of time there, but did you have siblings?
Yes, I have 3 sisters.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And are they older, younger?
I have 1 older and then 2 younger.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So did you all, sometimes having a sibling when you're one of Jehovah's Witnesses is great. If you don't have a congregation with a lot of young people, it helps to, at least have somebody at home that you can hang out with, because, for a lot of us, we weren't allowed to make friends at school or whatever. So did that really help you to have your siblings with you when you were growing up in it?
Yes, definitely. I mean, I did have a lot of friends my age, but it was definitely nice having siblings. A couple other things I was just going to say about school before talking more about my siblings. I do remember kids saying, "You're in a cult."
It's bad when even the kids know.
I know. Kids are brutally honest. They just tell it like it is, right? But they would like ask you to do different things, or I was asked to be like on the basketball team because I was very tall, by some teachers, and I couldn't do it. They would ask to go to prom or even call the house. And I remember one guy was like asking me to come to, I think it was prom or court or something, whatever. And I'm like, I can't. And he's like, oh, yeah, because of that cult or whatever, right? And I'm like, well, why don't you ask your girlfriend anyway? And he's like, it has to be somebody in your grade or whatever. And I'm just like, well, I don't know how this works, or whatever. But it's funny. And I was thinking about this game we used to play, my sisters and I, when we were at home. And we're in a very rural area in a super small town. I don't know why that matters exactly, but so we would set up chairs and put like a tape in of like The Great Teacher, or I don't know, Kingdom Melodies or something, and we called it Playing Meeting.
Oh, what a boring game.
All we did was like beat the living shit out of our dolls for not paying attention. I'm not kidding.
That is an awful representation of some actual truths.
Isn't that something
Oh no.
when you think about it? And we made jokes about it forever, but now looking back at everything I know, but I mean, isn't it the truth about how? But I mean, I'll never forget that. I used to call all my dolls Liz for whatever reason. All my little baby dolls, like, Liz, pay attention. Don't, I'm gonna have to take you to the back room. It
Oh
was
no.
so funny. Yeah, so
So
that was
is
a
that
classic game we would play at home.
yeah, is that essentially art imitating life? Is that how it was for you at the meetings?
um, I mean, I remember getting spankings as a kid. My older sister was kind of the problem child, so I think she took the heat off of the rest of us with her behavior to a certain degree. But I mean, I don't recall myself getting like, I mean, I remember my dad spanking me and stuff, but not anything to. But I mean, I do remember other kids being, smacked around and stuff. So
Oh yeah, I mean
definitely.
yeah, it's really there's a almost a there's an atmosphere at the Kingdom Hall whereby a child gets taken out and they're kind of like no no no, and everybody in the
Right.
auditorium kind of giggles about it, and it's really not that funny because that kid knows what he's about to go get, just
Right.
because he's been put in a situation whereby he's supposed to sit perfectly still for 2 hours and not be a child. Um, it's a really unfair circumstance, and when you kind of think about it, it's really a little sickening how they giggle about it like it's funny, um, because children are being put in unfair positions. These meetings weren't made for kids.
Not at all. It was the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Hardest thing. I helped my sister-in-law with her two kids at different at meetings a lot of times, and like conventions and assemblies, and it does, and they put so much pressure on you, like as parents to the whole congregation. Like if you don't have your kid in line or whatever, more so than even a married couple. I mean, a married couple is bad enough, they say. You're the woman, and keeping her in line and how she's
Right.
acting is, but when you have a kid, people are just, oh,
Super
he should be
judgy.
wearing, yeah, super judgy. He should be wearing a tie. He should this, he should that. It's just like, oh my word. Like there's not enough pressure.
Yeah, you grow up too fast. You become little adults a lot of times, because you're forced into an adult's world and an adult role as a little kid.
I was on emergency services too before at like conventions
Mm-hmm.
where you'd have to like get called to clean up vomit and stuff a lot of times and whatever. But we would, just because I was like in the department, we would see kids that were like clearly, like had a big Bible mark welt on them and different stuff. And like, you're just like, oh my goodness, like, you know, not right, not
No,
good.
not a healthy environment for kids. So speaking of kids, you being a kid in it, we've talked a little bit about what your life was like at home. Obviously, you had friends at the Kingdom Hall, so in the church, let's say, you had your friends. But how was life for you in the Kingdom Hall? Were you a family that was very regular? Did you like to participate in commenting or going out in service? What was your experience growing up as a little, witness kid in the Kingdom Hall?
Well, I don't know who in the world, especially as a kid, would like service. Like, yeah, I'm all about this. I want to get I want to get right on this. I hope I can find everyone from my class this morning. Uh, I mean, that's how it was. I would dread that completely because you just already feel like a weirdo, and then you're like, it's such a small town where everybody knows everybody. I mean, thank goodness sometimes for rural in the distance, so that hopefully could eat time up faster.
Yep.
But you're dreading the thought of like knocking on, your classmate's door. And when I was younger, I would say my family was never very good about, I don't ever remember having like a family study or being prepared or even always going out really as a family or anything. I feel like it was, I don't know, hit or miss. I mean, it was like expected of you somehow and whatever, and other people would judge you to a certain degree in the hall. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, you kind of did it always, but my dad was never like a ministerial servant or an elder, or I don't think they were ever strong. I just feel like, I
Gotcha.
don't know. they
Gotcha.
dealt with they dealt with a lot of issues. But I mean, we did always go to the meeting. That was just like never a question. But and
Was there
I mean,
anything that you did like about it? Because like actually some people like the aspect of going out in service, of being with their friends sometimes, or being able to, it was a chance to hang out sometimes, or just the association before or after meetings, seeing their friends there. Were you a person that, what was there anything in it for you? Was there anything that you enjoyed about it, or was it all kind of drudgery for you?
well, I mean, I do remember having fun sometimes
Hmm.
in the summer, or like being able to take this like territory out. I mean, I was in such a small town. We'd never even like had a McDonald's or anything. We got a Subway once later in
Ooh.
life, and that was exciting. But we would try to get this territory where we could go very far, and we could like get to a Dairy Queen, and like, ooh, that was like fun. But I mean, you would have some fun with people and stuff. But I do remember getting car sick a lot too, and sometimes throwing up with like all these, sometimes there's like a boy you have a crush on or something in the hall, and you get like super car sick, and
What was it
like
with people out in service not opening their windows? So many like cars where I was just dying for some fresh air. I don't know what that's
I
about, but
know,
there were so many stuffy, awful cars.
totally. And it's always like the worst driver in the universe would be the one raising his hand and always wanting to drive, and you're like, are you kidding me? Like, I'm in a neck brace from the last Saturday. Thank you, brother crazy.
We literally had an older brother in our hall. He was an elder. And when I was a pioneer, I remember myself and another brother, we used to joke. And, looking back now, it wasn't funny. We used to joke about the angel in his glove box, because that would have been the only thing to keep us alive. I mean, this guy could not drive at all. And yet he was a pioneer and an elder, and he drove out in service every day. And I do not know how he never killed all of us. It was just the worst scenario, but yet he was entrusted. And, you just all went along with it because that's what we all did. Um,
Right? There must be one in every hall because it's pretty much describing this guy that I'm talking about.
it's just absolutely terrifying. And he would pull out in front of people, and and cars were barreling down on us, and he would joke and say, "Oh, it's on your side." And like, he
Oh,
narrowly averted things at times. I really don't know how we never were involved in a really bad wreck. But this is Jehovah's Witnesses, and you don't question. You just go along with whatever it is. And
right,
he's an elder. What are you gonna say?
right. A funny little side point about brother crazy driver that I'm talking about. When he retired, he actually job driving patients
Oh
to their
God.
like appointments, and we're like, oh my gosh, we could not stop laughing. I mean, I'm just envisioning these people like, they need another appointment after they get out of the car ride with him. Uh,
My dad, and this is the honest truth. He was literally blind in one eye and couldn't see out the other. I kid
oh
you
my,
not. He literally, at a point in his life, had lost, because he neglected himself so much. He could not see out of one eye. He was blind in it, literally. The other eye had a cataract on it. He told no one. I remember getting in the car one time with him, and the windshield was completely frosted over, and he just jumps in the car, fires it up, and starts driving. And I was like, Dad, um,
Oh
you gonna
my
clear that
word.
windshield?" And I think that's what it always looked like to him. And
Oh my
he
word.
got a job as a courier. He drove around at times. I believe he even like delivered like um body parts for organ transplants,
Oh my
and this
word.
man could not see. He could not see. And yeah, it's just when you really think about the level of denial that goes on just in these simple situations in the Kingdom Hall, it's no wonder people just end up going along with the flow for so long, because there's so much denial involved in so many aspects of these people's lives, a lot of
Right.
times. And it's kind of scary when you think about it, how denial can make humans do some really dangerous things.
For
So
sure.
yeah, so obviously the Kingdom Hall wasn't necessarily your bag. It wasn't your thing. At school, were you able to make friends there? Did you find any escape there? Or were you, it sounds like you kind of kept to yourself there, but I don't know, were you someone that found friends or fit in or enjoyed school at all?
Well, I had a lot of friends in the hall, but it was just more like it was a thing where like we weren't a popular family per se, or like in the clique, like my parents never had money to do things, and maybe like um at some point they were just a bit more socially awkward than that and whatever. So it was more like I would be going to like my friend's house just like by myself. I don't think we never took family vacations or did a whole lot of at you know with other families in the hall or anything like that
Right.
much. But I did have friends like of my own, and like I just wanted to like escape the house all the time. So I was just always going to like the friend that lived not too far away.
And was she was
So
a witness?
yeah, she was a witness. Her dad was an elder. He was like the presiding presiding overseer.
Okay, so were you allowed to have friends in school, or was that something you even wanted, since you seemed to have your own friend group?
Um, I just didn't even. It never really dawned on me. I mean, when I was in high school, I kind of wanted to do some things, or it did seem like, sometimes you would be jealous. I remember even kind of feeling like for Saint Nick's or whatever, like learning about Saint Nick or whatever, and kids would come with all this stuff that they got from their parents, and I'm just like, dang, these kids, they get everything. Even another thing in addition to Christmas, and just of course people having like, when you're not well off, maybe just people having the keeping up with the trends and stuff, and
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, so how did things kind of start to play out and progress as you went into your teenage years on into young adulthood? Did baptism come up during that time, or what was your trajectory?
Well, in my like early teenage years, I was like 14. Which I got baptized at 14 too, and that was just like, what else are you gonna do? That's what everyone has to do.
Hmm.
It's just what you do. All your friends are doing it.
You know it's
Um,
expected.
right. It's just sort of what you do, like, because that's just the way it is. You don't know anything else, and that's what everyone's doing. And I remember I didn't even know what the word Trinity meant when I was going like through the questions.
Oh
I mean, obviously when they explained it, but I was just like, I remember being like super nervous and like answering it wrong and him having to explain what it was or whatever. But when I was 14, um, we found out that my mom was pregnant, which she didn't she didn't handle the best. She just really was. not thinking she was pregnant. And I think her and my dad were having struggles at that time because my dad was starting to have like mental issues. I think that my mom was like trying to hide to a certain degree. So my younger sister is like 3 years younger than I am, and for the long time it was just us three. Even my dad like named the business after his three daughters and stuff. So it was just like a lot of adjustment thinking about bringing, having a baby. And my mom was just so sad about it, like crying a lot and having a hard time adjusting. And I'm sure it was, now looking back, the more things going on with my father or whatever that were playing into it that we were kind of shielded from. But my dad was super, before kind of like a turning point when I was 14, he was a super fun, just like cracking jokes all the time and like being very playful, and like he would like put our name like into a song and sing like on the way home from like meetings and stuff, and just really involved, down to earth, like, and just silly or whatever.
Yeah.
Like I remember he was like, I don't know where my mom was, but he was like making dinner for us girls and stuff, and the mashed potatoes had like lumps in them, and we're all like, what's up with these like lumps in the mashed potatoes or whatever? And he's like, oh, those are water chestnuts, they add flavor or something. Like they weren't. He was just being,
Silly. Yeah.
it being silly, but he always had these like funny jokes and stuff. But when I was 14, he kind of had a complete I don't know, psychotic break or something of that sort. And he was thinking everyone was like out to get him, and that people were trying to like poison him. He was like worried to like eat donuts at work. I guess he thought that like tree frogs were evil or something, and he was literally trying to like kill all tree frogs like in the area. It was like bad, and like we couldn't wear like knots like in our clothing or like cross our legs a certain way and stuff like that. It was just very bizarre. Like he just was not himself. He was constantly like jotting down numbers and like thinking numbers meant something, and like, almost like a, I don't know, conspiracy type of thing. And he like didn't really trust people in the hall either, like elders and stuff.
Oh, that's very sad.
Yeah, it was very sad. And so my mom was like trying to get him help, trying to get him to the doctor. But I think when I don't know if it's like, I'm not sure exactly what he was diagnosed with, if it was some kind of schizophrenia or whatever. She was trying to get him help. But when you feel like you don't trust anyone and the world is out to get you,
yeah.
that's very hard.
Yeah,
But
you're not going to go for help.
Right. But so in addition to like all these changes, and I think being like a 14-year-old girl and having like, emotions and hormones and this change of a new baby. So then we left my dad for a while and lived in a hotel. And like it was some kind of, like ultimatum, like you got to get help and you got to get better, or the girls and I aren't coming back or whatever. So that was very traumatic. And then I think we were like, the people that needed help.
Oh yeah.
And so then I just like, because my dad had issues and he just was different, and it just, kind of got worse and worse. Because I think before that, maybe they would, have a little more interaction and stuff with people. But then after that, I know my mom just felt like people didn't help her and she was like abandoned, and she's got this, pretty new baby and all these adjustments, and her husband has gone off the rails, and yeah, so it was definitely tough. And then from there on out, he sort of was just like a shell of a person, just very quiet. I think he was constantly trying to hide thoughts that he had, or hide like papers that he was like trying to calculate all these numbers on or whatever.
Did he get help, or did he just shut up,
He
basically?
really, yeah, I think he might have been on medication for a while, but I think that he just sort of thought, well, if I act on these things, then they're going to think I'm crazy, or my family left me and whatever. So I feel like he was just trying to hide it more so.
Wow.
But after that, and like he would kind of like walk into the meeting almost like this fellowship person, honestly. Just like walk in, and like when it's starting, and really not want to talk to anybody, and then pretty much leave. And he would sit in the car and wait for us to come out of the hall. And really there was no help given at all. I know my mom called like some kind of psychologist that was like some kind of, I don't know if he was a circuit overseer or something,
Oh, goodness.
like, yeah, that was supposed to be like a psychologist, but I don't even know if he like saw my dad once maybe, or if he even saw him at all. And they're trying to, but it's just like nobody ever really helped,
Wow. And what's sad there, I mean, it's sad because your mom needed help, you girls needed help, and your dad really, needed somebody to wrap their arms around him and, see if they could get him to get some professional help. Because I mean, that does sound, somewhere along the lines of something like a schizophrenia, some sort of a break there, a little bit from reality. And, you know, that's just, it's heartbreaking to hear because it's Jehovah's Witnesses, for all the talk they do about, Jehovah's loving organization. It seems like when the chips are down, a lot of times there's nobody around to help.
Right, right. For all the love and unity and brotherhood that they talk about when you're in a situation. And I mean, none of these people, they're just not qualified to do
No,
it either, but
no.
there's ways that practical help that can be given. I mean, I even think about how my friend I was talking about, she, they would have um circuit overseers and stuff stay at their house, and they had room at their house. I mean, I'm just like, why did we even end up in this rinky dinky hotel? We didn't have that much money. It would have been nicer to even be with somebody that versus, you know?
Yeah, I was kind of thinking when you said hotel, I was like, well, now let's see. Unless things change, they didn't have a lot of money, and hotels aren't cheap.
Right.
Well, I mean, there are cheap hotels, but even then, it's still more expensive than, where were the brothers and sisters? It seems like you could have stayed with somebody because your
Right.
dad had a real mental health issue. And that there should have been compassion for that and help given, you would think. And not that the elders or anyone in the Kingdom Hall should have been able to help him with his issues. I'm not saying that at all, but they should have helped you all try to help him get help.
Right.
So
Right. And there was a lot of practical things that could be done too, obviously. But yeah. So I think that was kind of it was devastating and a very hard thing to overcome, because you just sort of, you felt like you lost your dad, basically. I mean, he completely changed as a person. Yeah, and it was tough.
I can identify. I had a somewhat similar, not but not the same types of symptoms, set of circumstances with my mom when I was growing up, and so I understand. And did your dad? I have that. Did your dad ever recover, or was it something that was just kind of the new normal, so to speak?
Yeah, in my opinion, I just felt like it was the new normal.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I mean, he has his moments, or where he can like reach out and say things to you and like, but I don't know, a lot of times he's very disconnected and yeah, like I say, I feel like mental illness, life, it has beat him down. I mean, my mom, I think, suffers majorly from depression and her own issues, and I feel like she was very hard on my father and beat him up, and like, I don't know, it's a bad dynamic.
Yeah, well, and then
she was dealing with her own stuff. She wasn't capable of dealing
right.
with it either, and it just really created a bad situation altogether. He wasn't getting the help he needed, and she's super depressed, and I think kind of sharing too much stuff with us sometimes, or looking for her kids to be her friends more than being her children.
Yeah. When something like that happens, sometimes boundaries go out the window. If the boundaries were there ever, I mean, maybe your mom always kind of overshared with you, but
yeah, I think she kind of did. I think that she just had a lot of troubles, and yeah.
And let's also say your parents were also in the cult of Jehovah's Witnesses. I mean, you're talking about pressure. There's a tremendous amount of pressure on any brother in the Kingdom Hall to perform, to a certain extent. And, who knows what the pressure to perform, whether it was as a family head or a brother in the Kingdom Hall or just as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. There's a lot of pressure there that I think does force people sometimes into scenarios where they break.
Right. Yeah. And kids were cruel in the hall too. Sorry for the creaking door
okay.
here. I have to go. Like I remember getting teased a lot about like my parents' vehicle that they drove. Like they had this nasty like station wagon with like a mismatched panel on the front of it. And like, I don't know, kids. And I never remember like kids in the, sorry, it's my spazzy dog that was left alone for.
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah, she's back. Now that a person is back in here. But I never remember being like teased by kids like at school or anything. But I remember being teased about acne by kids in the hall, and like being teased about our vehicle, and that we couldn't do things. It was just, yeah.
Did you
kids were cruel?
Yeah. I know they really were. Did you have the station wagon that had the seat in the back that faced backwards?
Yes, indeed.
We did too.
But we just had the really junky one, the one that was previously in a crash, and it had like the one panel that was just like a Bondo situation.
Ours smoked so bad that out in service, you could start the car and drive around the block, come back, and the smoke was still there from when you started.
Oh,
I mean,
gosh.
it was so embarrassing. It was just mortifying.
So it's like Uncle Buck, if you ever saw it. And it has like the big kickback. What do they call that or whatever with a car when it makes that like oh my
backfire?
Gosh.
Yes,
Backfire. But his
cars.
smoked so bad. Oh my gosh! And the kids were dying when he had to pick them up. But that is such a good movie. But, yeah.
And you die of the fumes in the back seat. So that was always nice.
Oh my
too.
gosh! And you wonder what people think, and then you're supposed to come to their door and tell them how to solve all their problems. You're like, well, buddy, I think you should worry about the car you're driving. Let's work on that problem first, right?
Yes, you need to be
Oh
like
my
us. Look at how well put together our lives are.
right?
Yes,
Oh
there was
my
literally a moment I had at one point in my life when I was waking up in my 30s where I looked around the Kingdom Hall and I just sized everybody up and I was like, these are the people that found the one and only truth. Like of life, of
God.
everything. Like how
Right.
is that possible? Um these people don't are not known for making a lot of good decisions. When you look at their lives, how in the world did these people find, quote, the truth? You know, that it just didn't add
Right.
up. And I think it gets
Right.
back to what you were saying about inviting people to come be like us. Um, so you got baptized at 14. Your mom has your little sister. Your
Right.
dad has his episode.
Right.
Kind of where do you go from there? You know, you start getting older, 16, you start you know, maybe you can drive, you can start getting a little more independence. So how did your life progress?
Um, yeah, it was fun having our little sister because it was like a real life doll to play with. I mean, wait until we get her at meetings so we can beat the crap out of a real doll. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh no.
I'm just kidding. No, but it was fun kind
Yeah.
of because we were all so much older,
Right.
and I mean it's a fun change. So there were definitely moments with that, and then I did get a car, and I was driving, and I remember I was the first one of or one of the first ones out of all of our little JW friends to get a car. So, and we had like an open campus for lunch, so um, I would drive everybody in the car for lunch and stuff. That was fun. Um, yeah, I think though I was ready to be like out of the house and moving on. I said when I was like 18, when I was getting to be 18, like I I want to leave and hopefully never come back to this house. I guess something about like the small town, a lot of drama. Um, yeah, like there was some drama with my friend that I talked about that was an elder. My grandpa ended up getting disfellowshipped for I think it was for drunkenness. I'm pretty sure. There's just like conflicting things after the fact, and I was so young at the time. But this girl that was my friend, like said to me before I knew anything about my grandpa getting in trouble or really understanding disfellowshipping or anything. She said something like, "Oh, your grandpa's gonna be disfellowshipped. Like I saw the papers on my dad's desk or something."
Oh wow, that's a bad way to learn.
Yeah.
Not that there's a good way to learn. I mean, what's the alternative? You find out at the Kingdom Hall on the day of. I mean, there's no good way.
Right. And so that was a whole thing. And I know that that was a big, like, blow up. And obviously my parents were super upset and a lot of other people. And it was just kind of like the way it was that this family and like the dad was a presiding overseer that like his wife and like their kids always had like the inside scoop on stuff. And there was no, you know, anonymity or whatever you want to say, that he wasn't keeping things private, and he basically like employed everyone in the hall in a construction company. And so it was very it just, yeah, there was a lot of like, I don't know, favoritism per se, and a lot of things that were just like, if you were an elder's kid or you were part of this clique, then things could be swept under the rug.
Yep, like most congregations, it's as a lot of times it's who you know as to how things turn out when it comes to a judicial matter. Did your dad work for that guy?
No,
Okay, gotcha.
no, a little bit of a different business, but yeah, that business that did end up like just totally um blowing up, and a lot of people, it caused like a lot of division with a lot of people, and I mean, like lawsuits and people moving, and actually one of his sons just didn't even want to be involved anymore and whatever. But yeah, it was just a bad situation.
Lawsuit? You're not supposed to sue your brother.
Yeah, right. I think that's just like, always a bad idea too,
Oh
to
yeah.
to yeah, to get involved with family or friends.
Oh yeah, there was a lot of
Yeah.
bad boundaries and mixing of business and families and the cults, and it ended up causing a lot of really hard feelings. People tend to take advantage of one another when they're Jehovah's Witnesses too. You see a lot of that.
Yes.
Really shady business dealings and bad situations. You really see who people are a lot of times in those situations.
Yeah, my uncle that I talked about that lived with us, he actually he was in auto repair, and he kind of like ripped a lot of people off, or like, I don't know that he ripped people off, but like he would say he was going to be, done in a certain time, and he wouldn't be. And I mean, even in dealings that like my siblings had with him and my parents had with him, and that like my mom and him had just a very like toxic relationship. It would be like they hate each other and they wouldn't be talking for a long time, and then they would be talking again. And I felt like my mom, like, talk about no boundaries. I just feel like there was constantly, she wasn't like standing up for us girls or standing up for what's right. She is like, she'll talk about me to my other sister, and then talk to me about my other sister, and like complain about my uncle to somebody else, instead of like ever just dealing with the problem head on. And yeah, it just created a lot of problems. And like, just like my grandma was like such a liar, and my uncle is just like a liar. I remember my grandma telling me, like, when I was younger, that like, your parents aren't going to make it into the new system, you're going to have to live with me. And
Oh.
yes, just like really, really crazy stuff. And I remember my uncle telling me, your parents borrowed all this money from this family member, and like just all these like crazy things. And like, yeah, none of them were true. It's just a very dysfunctional family.
Yeah, that really is. I think that there was a lot of lying in the organization. We lied to ourselves a lot of times about how we really felt about things. We were put in bad situations where we had to lie to protect things, or it's a shame so many people had to do that. But you were talking about your uncle being a mechanic. It made me think. At one time, I had an old Chevy Suburban, and the transmission went out in it, and everybody was like, "You need to go to this brother. He's such a good mechanic." So I went to this brother, and I asked him to I needed a new transmission. My transmission went out, and so he went out and he got a used transmission and he put it in there, and it didn't work. And so he gives me the car back, and I paid him the money, and I go to drive the car away, and it won't go anywhere. And I was like, wait a minute, did you put a transmission in here? He's like, oh, yeah, I did. I was like, well, it doesn't go anywhere. And he was like, well, you just told me to put in a transmission, and that's what I did. And I was like, well, I wanted a working transmission. I didn't just pay you, $800 or $1,000 for another used broken transmission. And, it just ended up being this huge deal. But those are the kind of situations that you you end up in inside the organization, and it's just really weird the way these are supposed to be your brothers and sisters, and you would die for them, and so on and so forth. But boy, they will really put the screws to you, and and
Right.
and do some nasty things that I would never tolerate or expect from a quote, awful worldly company. Um,
Yeah, right. He too, something that I was just like hurtful. Like when we were young, um, a family member offered my mom this pool, and we were like all so excited, like a big above ground pool, like that you could, not just a little, it had the filter and the whole 9 yards. Like
oh yeah.
us girls were so excited about it. Well, somehow my uncle like convinces my mom that he should have the pool, and the pool is too much work for us and blah blah blah. He like did not even have kids or anything, and here we are, like, four girls that could be using the pool and whatever, and just like took it basically from my mom, because my mom just like I say, just never deals with anything,
Non-confrontational.
or yeah, non-confrontational, even though it's just so he has the pool, and he doesn't live crazy far from us, but like I say, the relationship was so toxic or whatever, and like he would have like people over from the hall that were like had more money and did other stuff, and they'd be all like swimming in the pool and talking about what a great time they had in the pool and whatever. It was like his new thing that he was in with the people in the hall, and I'm just like, wow. Like we did so much for him. Like us girls were like his chaperone constantly. When he was dating, he lived with us, and like we did like he was like building this house, and we like would go pick rocks in fields, because he was building like a fireplace out of rocks in the field, and like put insulation in his house, help him move cars. And it was just like, and he'd be like, well, I'm going to give you all the change in my pocket for this, and then I'm like, somebody else is giving us a pool and you take it from us. I'm like, you are just an evil person.
Yeah, there are a lot of users inside the congregation as well. Um, well, so you said that at 18 you wanted to just get out and move away. So did you, or were you able to get out, or what happened?
Yes, I did. I did move out with a friend that I also met around the same age, that lived in a different state. And I lived with, she was another witness, obviously. And I lived with her family for about a year. But it was kind of like hard to, to figure out what to do to get a good job, like to be that far away from, like, it was like 9 hours away from friends and family, and like I just couldn't really, I don't know what to do or get established. It was more like goofing around and like having fun, which was fine.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in a way I learned things. But then after that, I mean, I must have came home for a while, and then the girl I was friends with, her older sister had a job being a nanny, and she thought I would be perfect for the job, and she was moving. So that is how I ended up basically in the area I am now, which is where my dad's family is from. So sometimes we would go visit his grandparents. My grandma on his side would do stuff with us, and I had some friends in the area from because it's the area obviously my parents were at first until they moved to the rural town. So I knew some people. So I was going to take this job, and then I moved in with one of those friends that were in the area that I am now. Yeah, so I took that job, and that was very good. And my friend that I moved in with had this crush on this guy, and he would end up being my future ex-husband.
That escalated quickly.
I know, right? I skipped the whole middle, but no, it was kind of very dramatic a little bit. They were never dating or anything, but the day we told her that like we had feelings for each other and stuff, she just like, oh my gosh, she just like freaked out and kicked me out and like wouldn't even move her car, and like I had to drive across the lawn to like get out. And yeah, I was kind of
Because it was clearly your fault that he didn't have feelings for her.
right, obviously.
Okay. All right. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Such is the maturity of many Jehovah's Witness relationships. What about so you all ended up dating then after that?
Right. And then so I came to the area because to take the job or whatever. Well, not long after being in the new hall and in this new area, um there was like a lot of guys in the hall um and whatnot, but yeah, it was just crazy. I wasn't even like doing anything with like, I don't know. I wasn't like hanging out with all these guys or anything, but two elders like approached me after like a Sunday meeting, and they're like, you came to this congregation targeting our boys. I can't remember how they said it, like looking for a man or whatever. And I'm like, say what? It was, yeah, it
Okay.
was pretty crazy.
Let's play that out and just say you did. So what? like let's just say that you did go to that Kingdom Hall because you were looking for a mate. Isn't that what you're supposed to do? Like how else are you supposed to find somebody inside the witnesses? Like it's just so dumb. And of course, you being the woman, it's your fault. So
Yeah, it was, yeah, it was pretty crazy. Both of those, one has like a big time mental illness. I think they both do, but they ended up like getting removed not too long after that. But I start seeing my whatever, I don't know, my ex, I guess at this point, but it sounds funny, dating my ex. And there's just like tons of pressure. Like it just seemed like immediately, like during this course, the girl that I had moved in with initially when I left home was going to go to California, and she was wondering if I would want to move with her there. And I was like contemplating it, even though it would mean, leaving my target congregation where I wanted to annihilate all men. So my plans would be foiled. But yeah, so I was like trying to decide what to do, and my ex was just really like not wanting me to leave or whatever. But then it was like, when are you setting a date? Like,
oh, it's instant, isn't it?
instantly.
Yeah. Yeah. The first time anybody sees you hold hands with somebody, it's like, all right. So when are we to, start planning the reception and the engagement parties and the, all the things?
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And it was hard too, because I was sort of like, after I got kicked out of that girl's house and stuff, I had lived with my like grandma for a while. I was like kind of a gypsy. It was just because my grandma on my mom's side, she's just the one that told me like that stuff when I was younger. And she was kind of, I don't know, she had her own issues, and she was kind of toxic. And when you're young, you don't really want to be like, I don't know, hanging out with grandma. She was a cool grandma maybe, but and I didn't even like get into that exactly, but my grandma and grandpa got divorced and then got remarried
Oh boy.
to, yeah, this is very dysfunctional. So she was living on her own. They were like separated for a while, then they got divorced, and then they weren't even divorced that long, and then got remarried. But yeah, so it was kind of hard too because they were like, trying to ask us when we're going to get married and what our plans are and stuff like that. And it was hard because I really didn't have like stability of any sort. I was kind of like a gypsy woman. So, yeah. So obviously we ended up getting married.
Of course.
Yeah.
How long
Yes.
did you date before you got married?
I know we were engaged for a year,
Oh,
which
all right.
was like not even, not recommended either. They want you to have like a short engagement, I guess,
Oh,
or
yeah.
whatever. But yeah. So, I don't know how long we were.
Yeah, but a year engagement, that's a long time for a lot of relationships, so.
Yeah. And I did have like red flags and like I gave him the ring back at one point because he was very clingy, like super clingy, like would go wherever I would go. Even I remember him coming to like a baby shower and saying he wanted to be there so he could record the baby shower on this video camera, but it was like he could not leave me alone. Like it was like smothering, like too much. And I was telling I came home for a while and I was like telling my mom and the uncle and why I would listen to the uncle, Mr. Steal the Pool. They're like, he's such a nice guy. No, you should get married to him. He's such a nice guy, blah, 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 or whatever. So yeah, I did have my doubts, but ended up going through with it.
And how does life progress from there? I mean,
Oh my gosh, I forgot to tell you. When we were dating also, his dad was a ministerial servant, my ex's dad, and his mom was never a witness. She thought that they were very chauvinist. Imagine that. And so she was turned off by a lot of things. And another reason is because my ex-husband's father is a giant douchebag. We actually saw him take his mom's head and like slam it on the table like multiple times and like was super violent and abusive to her, like called her stupid. Everything was her fault. Like one time they had like this very steep hill in the driveway. He like was backing out with the car and ended up like sliding off and hitting a tree. And he was the only one in the car. And it was somehow her fault because if she didn't park the car where she parked it in the driveway, none of that apparently would have occurred, Yeah. So so when we were dating, we actually went to the elders with his sister, my ex's sister, and he ended up being removed as a ministerial servant.
Wow, I'm surprised they removed him.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was kind of crazy and traumatic. So even though I had my own, issues with my family, I had never really seen like domestic abuse on that like level. Right. And whatever. And clearly you can understand why she would want to have nothing to do with the organization when that's how they act, Right. Sign me up for the abuse, church. I'm all about that. So yeah, he was just not a nice person, not a good person.
So how did that translate into your new marriage? You get married. Your new husband is a product of that environment. Um, and when young witnesses get married, there is no time where you live together and get to see if if you're compatible in any way, shape or form. So
Right.
it can be you have people are different when you live with them all the time, and it's different than seeing someone just out on a date. So a lot of times people are surprised after they get married to someone, and they're like, "Whoa, this isn't who I thought they were. This person's not who I thought they were." How was it for you after you got married?
Well, full disclosure too. I just want to mention that we did have sex before we were married, and partly because I was like, I don't want to be thinking about this the entire wedding day. Like, this is my wedding day, and I don't want to be thinking, oh, is this going to be weird? Is it going to hurt? I'm like, how
Right.
about we just get this over and done with so that I can enjoy the wedding? Because, like, you think, that's going to be it, and that's like such a big thing in your life. So,
Okay, so then what you're saying is that everything that has ever gone wrong in your life from that time forward was because of that. Because
clearly.
clearly, because you sinned, and so you deserve anything that comes. Yeah,
I mean, of course, after that, my conscience
of course.
did bother me so bad, and like after the fact, we did go to the elders, and we got privately reproved. But so after we were married, I just the organization sets you up for like total failure.
Yep.
In every way, because you think that if you just go to the meetings, if you just do what you're supposed to, they just like paint this picture of this great family, great family life, and if you do everything, everything's gonna just completely work out. So you just like and have like this expectation in your mind and this total vision of just married bliss and how awesome it is to be an adult and out on your own, and it's just going to be nothing but pure awesomeness. But that is not so much the case at all. And like to go from somebody like that, like every breath I took was like he couldn't get enough of it, and he was just like everything about me, to just like yeah, there was a lot of like he was very volatile, and there was some abuse in the marriage, and much like his father, like everything was my fault. Like I'll never forget, in a rage, he's like freaking out and breaks a seat in the car, and somehow it was my fault. And I'm just like, how do you figure that
Because you
one?
made him mad.
Oh my gosh. It was just like, yeah. And he just, he really did nothing. He was like the baby of the family, and everything was done for him. And, his older sister did try to warn me how he was, but you just like young and stupid, and nobody's gonna tell you and whatever. But he just really didn't know how to be an adult. Like didn't pay bills, didn't handle the money, didn't like take care of the house, take care of the yard. I mean, just like anything and everything. He just didn't do it. He was like a child, basically. It was like I turned into like having to just grow up super fast and figure out how to do everything, because if he didn't get his way, he would just be like a kid, like literally go, pout in the room or whatever if he didn't get his way, and just be very obnoxious and hard to deal with, and everything was about him from there on out. I even said to him at one point, I'm like, did all you think like you had to do was like find somebody to marry and then like that was it, and then you don't have to do anything else? And he's like, yeah, that was the hardest decision to make. So it was it literally was like, that was the big goal, or like that's what he had to do. Like, it was the hardest decision to marry somebody, and then once he married somebody, he didn't have to do anything else, and they had to do everything, and what they wanted or what they said wasn't important. And I don't know that he meant it to be that way all the time, but like I don't know that he had like the motive of it being that way, but that's just like how it was.
Yeah. Unfortunately, the organization kind of churns out a lot of very immature young men who just don't really they don't understand even just basic adult responsibility, but also things like the ability to see your partner and talk to them and have empathy, or whatever the case may be. It's just not there. I don't know about the congregation you were in, but in the congregations that I was in, young brothers and young sisters didn't really even talk unless they were dating. So, it may be that the first female that you ever speak to, of your own age, your own peer group, in any way, is the person that you date, and there's just no knowledge of how to relate to someone else. There's no Jehovah's Witnesses are so narcissistic and so focused on the organization and achieving its aims that you're just not really taught how to see other people and understand where they're coming from. It really kind of is all about you for your whole life. And then you get married and it's supposed to be about someone else too. And that's not something that a lot of people, and I want to say on a level, particularly young brothers, are able to do, because they've kind of just been told that if they, reach out in the congregation and handle microphones and, pass out magazines or whatever, like that's what they've been bred to do. They've not been bred to do anything else other than that.
Right.
Yeah, just those kind of responsibilities. So there are just a lot of young men, boys, whatever, who get married, who, they think that they're going to get married. Their wife's going to take care of a lot of things. They're going to take care of things at the Kingdom Hall and probably sit around and play video games or something like that.
Right.
Yeah. There's just no real good role models there. Not a lot of good skills being taught.
I mean, and talk about video games. We got like a video game console for a wedding present, and literally we were in a fight on the honeymoon because he was playing with this console so much or whatever. I'm like, oh.
Yep.
One of many red flags immediately following. But I did end up like calling the elders shortly after we were married to like try to talk to him about like his violence and whatever. And I think that was just like a pattern in our family too, and probably like my mom's advice. My mom always said that my grandmother, who the grandfather that got disfellowshipped was very abusive and stuff, would always just call the elders, like that was the solution.
Yep.
For everything.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
So I assume, going to the elders and talking to them about this, did it prove beneficial?
No, I feel like he would just like, the pattern was like, to have this big blow up, an intervention of some sort, and then it would be like he would be better for a week, and then it would just go back to the same old, and like he just never got it. He never grew up. he never understood what he had to do. And it was like, you just never knew what he was gonna like get upset about or whatever. And like, it was just very much like, if I didn't tell him something, if I told him something, most of the time he would do it. But I would like, it's almost like you'd have to be like right there holding his hand the whole time. It was just, there was like no support, no help. It was like he could remember a movie that he liked when he was 5 years old, but I would tell him ask one simple request of him, and like 10 minutes later he would forget to do it and whatever. I'm just like, how does that work?
Yeah, I would say for one thing, he sounds like a very, and sadly, a very unhappy person. A very frustrated person, probably. That's why he blows up so much. And a person who's looking outside of himself for happiness, which might be why he's, always following you around, expecting you to make him happy because he doesn't know how to himself. And it's just, yeah.
And he was still was still very much under his father's thumb and control. Like, his dad controlled like where we lived, what car we drove, and like would just pop in whenever he wanted to. And like, if he saw a purchase of any sort, and everything with his dad was an interrogation. It was never like, hi, how are you guys doing? It was always like, just like in a total interrogation, like under lights. Like, it was always questions, like, not in a nice way.
And so you see how patterns get repeated, and it's unfortunate, because ultimately in a situation you want all these people to find happiness, and to be better people, which they would be. But it sounds like a lot of very unhappy, controlling people, and sometimes when you grow up in a controlling environment, you don't have many skills yourself other than control. That's all you learned how to do. Just sounds very, very unhealthy. And I'm sorry you had to be in that situation. And then that doesn't sound like the elders were a whole lot of help.
No. Yeah. And he would be very controlling about like, if I would be like reaching out and trying to talk to family at times and stuff, or like what I ate. And like, it would force me to like try things like that I didn't want to try. And like, just, yeah. And like my mother never really cared for him at all. And twice, like in front of my parents, he like completely like, lost his shit. Like, he got in this fight with a guy at State Fair over a chair and got in like a physical altercation. And then like they saw him take me and push me into a vehicle, like against my will. And yeah, it's just so, like I say about my mom too, it like, I don't know why nobody would step in. All she did, I feel like she kind of like poisoned me against him, but never really did anything to help, or like, there was nobody saying like, this is absolutely not right, and like, something has to be done. I just felt like it was never that way. But so one of many like final straws, I was just like, I had enough. And this whole time, like, I am trying to like write him these letters, make these plans, be a better, witness, pioneer, make them better meals, just do whatever I can do, go on antidepressant pills, lose weight. Like I'm thinking, if I just do this, if I just do that, or like, if I do everything I possibly can do spiritually, then it will all work out and whatever.
Yeah, it's a repetition of the pattern in the cult. It's like inside the cult, you do all the things hoping that someday you can be good enough.
And it's never good enough.
It's never good enough. And the same thing. And you see that a lot of the the families inside the cult mimic the dynamics of the overall cult, with some sort of a narcissistic leader, and then everyone else trying to gain that person's love and affection, and it never really happens.
Yeah. So one of the final straws after, having just being unhappy and trying all these things and just like him constantly doing stupid things that are so hurtful, I have a bladder infection that was misdiagnosed and it turns into like a kidney infection. And he is having like a networking gaming party. And we have a very small house at this time. It's like only a 2-bedroom house. And he has like all these boys over that are like super young, but that's where he is mentally,
Mm-hmm.
He's like in his 20s and they're probably whatever. I don't know. Young. I know some of them couldn't even drive. So they have like, computer set up here and they're like taking over the whole house. And I am like super sick on medication. And I was just even like trying to be cool, like, okay, you had this planned or whatever. But it's like he couldn't even like end it at a reasonable time. And it was like going on all day. And I could not, there was not even a place where I could like lay down or anything. And I just was like on my deathbed. And I'm just like, gosh, like this person, like I can't keep doing this. Like he just does not care. And like, how are you going to tell somebody to care about you?
That is a good question. How are you going to tell somebody to care about you? Shouldn't they do that on their own?
Right. It is like, and after saying stuff. So I wrote this big letter and I said, I think we should just like live in separate rooms of the house for a while, but maybe we need to separate and like reevaluate and blah, blah, blah. And then shortly after that, I was like a personal assistant for people and needed to get some stuff done for one of my employers. And I met a guy that was doing work for him. And then, of course, somebody giving me attention
Mm-hmm.
and being funny and feeling like he's listening to me and whatnot. One thing leads to another. And we ended up having an affair. And it's just like, I don't know how your twisted brain works. Like I was telling him stuff about witnesses and telling him my life and trying to tell him like, how great it all is at the same time. And he actually even like came to a meeting at one point, but
Denial is a hell of a drug.
Oh my gosh. And the whole time, my husband is just completely oblivious. Obviously, he's into like, I don't even know, World of Warcraft or something. Probably not that because JWs probably don't do that, but
Mm-hmm.
some kind of big, long, drawn out like game thing or whatever. So he was in his own world and this was going on. Well, his older sister that's married to an elder, we'll call her Big B. She somehow, could tell I was acting different or this and that, whatever else. So she invites me on a trip with a friend, and that whole weekend, or like we go to Chicago and she's like, they're trying to talk about stuff and feel me out or like try to look, she was apparently trying to look at my phone or this and that and see if she could find a number. And then nothing really became of that trip, except she like saw a number and I think she might have saw some text messages or something, I think when I was taking a shower. Then she was following me.
Wow.
Apparently, and like trying to like catch me in the act or whatever. And like now that I think about it like later, I just think to myself like, why do people think that like they just can't come out and ask you or whatever, which I guess everybody handles stuff in different way, but like we were pretty close. And like I just feel like there is this like stigma, like once you're doing something bad, you're totally bad and everything about you is bad and all you're going to do is lie.
Oh yeah, you can't be trusted.
Right.
In any way.
which I mean, I sort of get, obviously, and I do feel terrible about what I did, and not the way to handle things, obviously. Um, but she's like following me, and I'm cleaning an office. I like cleaned an office after hours, and she like comes pounding on the door and basically just like confronts me and asks me what I'm going to do. And I was just like, oh, I'll probably be disfellowshipped. And like, I admitted I had an affair and I felt terrible about it. And she's like, oh no, I know. Before this happened, the night that she was like following me, she had me come to her house, and she had her elder husband and her children keep me in the basement and like play games with them and stuff. Well, she went out to my car and looked through my phone.
Oh, good grief.
So, yeah, she had this like total plan. And looked at my phone, and so was trying to like, see if I was going to meet this guy or whatever else. So then she comes to the office and totally confronts me and this and that, and like just says all these stuff, like says all this stuff, makes all these assumptions or whatever. And then she's like, I'm driving behind you or whatever. And she had to like help me. I was supposed to like have a meeting part that week or whatever. And then like, obviously that was like, no bueno at that point. It was just really awkward. You're like hot and nervous, and I'm like, okay, well, this is happening later in the week, so I don't know what to do about that. And then I'm like, well, I have to finish cleaning. So like she had to help me finish cleaning after this like emotional giant confrontation, because she said, I have to follow you home, and I already told your husband and I already told the elders, and you need to go home and deal with this or whatever.
I have to follow you home.
Yep. So she made me. Yeah, I know. Like, what am I gonna do?
You really
have
don't.
my last blowout orgy because I've been busted?
Right.
I mean, I'm like, no. I gotta go out with a bang.
Who cares
here.
if you do?
You're gonna have to go home.
Right.
Since I've been found out. Like, woohoo.
Right. Who cares if you do anyway? You're gonna be disfellowshipped. It's already out there. I mean, like, it's the level of control that they think they can exert in your life. It's insane.
Right. So then, because she told the elders and whatever, all of that didn't help, my case or whatever. She was trying to tell me, and I mean, we were close, and I do feel bad about things or whatever. And in the beginning, she was trying to tell me like, if you just do everything right, in 6 months, you can probably be reinstated and blah, blah, blah. But I'm just like already thinking like, well, you already made me look like, you never let me deal with this on my own.
Yeah, I thought if you found something out, you were supposed to go to your brother first and then later go to the older men according to their own theology.
Well, right. But because she's married to one, like how convenient is that? And then she's trying to get like the inside scoop and tell me how to proceed. And like always, I've been a person like, if you tell me what to do, I am going to do the opposite. Like, don't tell me what to do. I just like, so yeah, that's like super awkward. Judicial committee, and the same guy that like married us and that we went to tell him that we like slept together before we were married is the one asking me now, like, where did it happen? How often did it happen? Were you sleeping with your husband at the same time? Did you sleep in the your bed, at your house? Where did it happen? How many times? I'm just like, oh my gosh, like, oh, so awkward. And part of it, like, I just remember just feeling like so sleazy, like when they were asking me like if I was sleeping with my husband at the same time and stuff. And I don't know, I guess it's just such a nerve-wracking, a stressful situation. I don't know if my ex was there with me at the time. I know obviously he was there for part of it, and when I got home that night, it was just so, I don't know. It was just so awkward. And like his reaction is never what you think it's going to be. And like he just never seemed to like care so much or like know how to handle it or what to do. It's almost like I had to walk him through handling the fact that I cheated on him or something. It's just very, I mean, I try to think about it now after a lot of therapy and stuff. Like, was I trying to get attention? Was I trying to escape? Like, you know, what would make me, I guess I was shut off at a certain point, you know?
Yeah. I mean, you kind of said it earlier. You were looking for attention, and you got some attention from somebody. You know, you were in a marriage where your husband was playing video games all the time, or whatever the case, and just wasn't stepping up. And I think the whole situation is a lot of the witness marriages have a lot of problems. I'll just say that.
Yeah. Well, and one thing I realized about him too is that like I was very much his hobby at the time. Like that was his goal. That's what he was into. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to find somebody to marry, and then, you're going to be married for the rest of your life. Like he wants all these things, but he doesn't do anything to attain them, I realize. But he has like a issue with like hobbies. So like I was his hobby at the time, but then he went into like all these different things like wine making, beer making, telescopes, taking pictures like through the telescope. It's some kind of thing. And like and he would go like just crazy. Like that was his whole focus. And his focus was nothing else. And a lot of times I was saying, we need to have a personal study. We need to have a family study. Like you're not the head of the house. And like, and especially like after conventions, you get done with a convention and you just feel like part of you feels like charged up, but then part of you just feels like, well, I'm a piece of shit. Like, and all the way home, you're saying like all the stuff you need to do.
We used to do that too. Yes.
Like it's your whole ride home. Like, well, we should do this and we should do that and simplify or whatever. It's just, oh my gosh. But clearly, until you know, fix what's broken inside of you and whatever, nothing else works,
Which is everything.
Right. And it can't be one person. That's
right.
The other thing. It was always me coming up with the plan, like asking for help. I mean, it's like, well, it can't be one person trying to do it all,
Right.
So
yeah, that doesn't work.
Yeah. So then I'm disfellowshipped, and it's obviously awful and dramatic. And I just remember being very like stuck a lot, like what to do. Like, should I leave? Should I stay? Should I leave? Should I stay? Even this like book I read like multiple times, like Too Good to Leave, like Too Bad to Stay, or something like that it is. And they ask you all these
I've heard of that.
questions, and you like write all this stuff. And I think like, and I was of course trying to like go to meetings and get back in and everything. But it was just very hard and very discouraging. And of course he doesn't change and nothing really changes there. And then you really don't have an outlet of any sort or a person to go to. If I used to call my mom and complain about my ex or not my ex, but my husband, which was all that I feel like my conversations with my mom or anybody really was in the hall. I just feel like that's all it ever was like complaining, and I was miserable. And like
that says a lot.
Just like saying you won't believe what he did, or calling crying, or trying to like figure it out, Yeah. So But then at some point, I just ended up, I remember I was going to say too, I went to like one of my relatives, like a niece or something, or no, it might have been my youngest sister. I think that's what it was. Um, I went to her baptism at, I think it was a convention, and I was disfellowshipped. And my whole family was obviously there from like all sides, you know, uncles and aunts and people I hadn't seen in a long time. And I could not stop crying, like uncontrollably crying. It was hard too because there was a lot of people like that I hadn't seen from like my hometown congregation, like kids that I grew up with and stuff there, because that's where my parents still were. And it was just awful. Like I could not stop crying.
Is that just
Even
because
these,
you felt the weight of the shunning?
yeah, because it was horrible to see all these people and nobody talked to you and nobody, like, you're trying to do the right thing by being like, I feel like I'm in a car talking about, but by being like at this baptism and doing like all the right stuff, and then all these people are there. It was horrible. I remember even like this elder from my hometown hall and his wife even kind of like put their like arms around me a little bit or whatever. But I'm a person, like, if I'm already upset and crying, like if somebody tries to hug me or touch me, it like makes it worse. But I mean, it was kind of like at the time, like, you know, a nice gesture because most people don't even,
Yeah, most
you
wouldn't do
know.
that. I was, yeah.
But it was like, it was a scene. It was definitely a scene. Yeah. And so, you know, and I think to myself later, how is that not showing that like I'm remorseful and I feel awful about this whole situation, you know, that I got myself into. But yeah, because it was very hard or whatever, of course, what do I end up doing but going back to the guy that I never really totally, oh, but I'm forgetting on part two. So after the disfellowshipping and stuff, the big B, the sister that's married to an elder that you know, plotted this whole CSI entrapment, she was like keeping tabs on like everything and calling me all the time. Well, not after I was disfellowshipped, it was like right before, you know, like you have like the 7 days or something,
Right, the week
to say your bon voyage before your funeral happens. So she's like calling me and checking in or whatever, and she somehow like talks to my husband and figures out that we were privately reproved. She's like, you weren't commenting for a while and blah blah blah, and I'm just like thinking, oh my gosh, like you are such a bitch. What does that have to do with anything right now? Like, that's water under the bridge. And like, why don't you just kick me while I'm down? And she makes some comment on the phone. Like, she's trying to keep track of me. Like, I was going to see my parents that lived like 2.5 hours away. And she's like going, don't you dare call him. I'm going to talk to you the entire time because I don't want you calling him when you're going to see your parents and blah, blah, blah. And almost like she didn't believe I was like going to my parents or anything.
I just had an epiphany. So that was his sister who's doing this, right?
His sister.
She's just as obsessed with you as he was at first.
Well, and I did a lot of stuff for her. Like I say, I was there for like a birth of her child, and like I had a job, but she did have like a lot of a hard time after having the kids and different stuff. And like I helped her with the kids a lot at the meetings and stuff too, but I would go over there and like stay overnight and get up with her kids so she could get some sleep and then go to my job the next day and stuff. And she was very, I mean, I realize now that she was very she's got a very like domineering personality, and like I was just very meek and mild, and she, you know, just like she tells you what to do and you listen, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah, but I'm just saying she's also got that obsession Doing what she's doing there it's domineering. It's close to what you said. Your husband like went to the shower and was trying to videotape the baby shower or whatever it was, just to be around you. And she's very obsessed with you. Like that's obsession on quite a level, to be, going through people's phones, and now she's going to talk to you so that you can't, call somebody else. And that is very obsessive and strange behavior.
Wow. I never thought about it like that. Just recently, I thought to myself, because a lot of stuff went down with her and it was very hurtful. I thought to myself that, like, she needed me more than I needed her. And that's what it was about, possibly. More about, like, what she was losing in that equation versus.
Could have been. I mean, she definitely is obsessed with you on a very strange level, talking about that, to the whole CSI investigation, all the way down to now where she's keeping you on the phone. That's really, really strange behavior.
Who takes the time to think back to, like, at this point, okay, we were married for probably 10 years or more when this happened. First, she's going to think back 10 years ago and remember that we didn't comment for 6 months.
It's a little stalkerish. It's
the
a
actual fuck? You know, you need to get a life. And, like, I mean, how are you even gonna? Yeah. And so, so that was like a thing. So she could always kind of like manipulate my husband in a way and just do whatever. And he was just, like, obviously never good about any kind of boundaries with his dad, with people, or standing up for me or whatever. So, I mean, I did kind of like say, like, this is so inappropriate. And, like, what does that have to do with anything or whatever? And then she actually, like, did apologize. But it's just starting to, you see a different side of people and, like, realize, like, what they're all about and whatever, and who your true friends are, and what, when you get disfellowshipped or shit hits the fan and stuff happens. But I'll never forget either this one sister in the hall that was, like, super, just, they're all gossipy, honestly. I mean, let's just be real. The gossip circle in the hall, and the fact that everybody knows everything all the time. But she was just extra, like, special and chatty and whatever. And when I got reinstated the first time, she's like, "Don't you ever do that again." And I thought, watch me. But I was just like, who are you to tell me? I don't know. I just didn't, like, I don't know. Like, that was not cool to me, Yeah. Like, everybody turns it into a thing that what you did to them.
Yes. Yes. And that's the victim blaming, what Jehovah's Witnesses do when you get disfellowshipped. It's like, well, you made the decision to leave us. No, you shunned me. That's how that works. Shunning is an action. It's a thing you do to a person, but somehow they're the victim of whatever happened, which is a very narcissistic way to be. Narcissists, they always play the victim and they blame others. And that's exactly the pattern that just keeps getting repeated. It's all about them, that you had an affair and had nothing to do with them whatsoever.
Right. Exactly. And it bothered me so much. And, like, I thought to myself too, like, who has all these people in the bedroom with them and knows what goes on behind closed doors? This is not like Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie. It doesn't need to be on the front of the watchtower. Like, this is not helpful. And why is it anyone's business?
Right.
When you involve all these people, and I'm just like, none of this is helpful at all.
Nope.
Yeah. So, I went back to the same guy because I don't think there was, like, a whole lot of time where, not tons of time where we weren't talking and stuff, but I did try to like, you're just so lost like when you're a social person and you have absolutely no one,
Mhm.
and it's all by design, obviously. But, and maybe some people have a family that decide to still talk to them or whatever, but nobody was talking to me at all, like I
Which is
was the
typical.
worst. Right. I was the worst of the worst of the worst. So I try to like join like workout like classes and stuff to just like meet people and to try to be like, at least I could have like girlfriends and have like some kind of social, interaction with people, um versus like going back to this guy, like trying to do the right thing. So I did, like, I kind of got close to the mom of a family that I nannied for, and I also met somebody through like a workout class that like helped so much. And like my husband, that was a JW, obviously, would come and do stuff with this couple that I met through like the workout class and stuff or whatever, but it's just very hard and it's very dividing. And then like my husband, he has a sister that's a witness, but then he had two brothers that were not witnesses ever. And so we would do things with them once in a while. And I remember his sister like just getting like so upset and like saying to my husband like, why would you choose to do something with her and our brothers? You could be doing something with like your nephews. And like it was just like a big thing, and like, yeah. And she would like basically tell him that he should, I think it was probably after the second time, that like um he should divorce me. um yeah, I think it was like after the second time I was disfellowshipped. Like I told you earlier, I've been disfellowshipped 3 times. I just need like a punch card. Your fifth disfellowshipping is free, and it comes with cigarettes and a porno, because clearly you just go off the rails and oh my gosh. But yeah, so I think it was after the second time that she was just saying like, you should get a divorce, and she was just being really awful and controlling and whatever. And it's just so, but like I say too, there's just like, he can do stuff and you can't do things, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And like, I love the Watchtower saying, oh, normal family relationships can continue. I don't know what kind of family you're talking about, but I'm like, yeah, you can't go to any functions. You miss things, you can't go to family gatherings. You don't know the inside jokes. You miss weddings. You miss other stuff. And it turns into this thing too, where he's the victim and I'm the evildoer, you know?
Oh yes,
And
absolutely.
and he has a voice and I have no voice. And he can say whatever he wants and I can't defend it. A, I don't always know what it is. B, sometimes I do, but none of those people are talking to me. Yeah. So I was really trying to be good and do everything and meet other people and not, um, see this guy again or whatever. And my husband, I was living in an apartment and stuff for a while, and we were separated. And I think there was like divorce papers printed out at that point, and I had started looking into it and filling them out or whatever. And he like wrote me this like 5-page like poem of sorts and saying how he's going to change and he doesn't want to lose me and give it one more try, blah, blah, blah type of thing. And so I went back and part of it too, when he was trying to get me back, he was saying like, I've always wanted to have kids, and I'm like, what am I doing with my life? And you know, I want to start a family. I don't want to be like this age and, you know, not have a kid and have a family and blah, blah, blah. And I realized with you not like being there, what I've been missing and what I'm going to do, or, you know, something along those lines, whatever type of thing. And so then I went back with him, and not too long. I mean, I was trying to come to meetings and do whatever, but then it didn't take long, and I was pregnant and disfellowshipped. Yay.
That's a tough combo.
It is a tough combo because you can't, you know, tell anybody in then like normal fashion, and there's a lack of, you know,
no help.
A lack of excitement and help, and just like you can't. That's such a big thing in your first kid, and whatever. So, yeah. So I was like pregnant in like the meetings to get like, and I was trying to like hide it when I was like going to meetings to get reinstated, because I was like, this is not how I want it to be, you know,
right?
Or how I want people finding out exactly, or whatever. And so, I go through the whole reinstatement mumbo jumbo. I actually had tried to get reinstated one time before that, and I wanted to go to my youngest sister's wedding, because I missed. I have two younger sisters, so I missed the one sister's wedding, and I didn't want to miss like another wedding. And while I was out, I was always like trying to do stuff too for my family, like, you know, send them gifts on anniversaries. And I had always like, with my youngest sister, I always like took her for the summer for like 2 weeks, and like, you know, did fun stuff with like the kids that I nannied for or whatever. So I was really like, I don't want to miss her wedding, you know? And they're like, no, you're not ready. And I totally felt like they were just like trying to stick it to me. Like, no, you're not going to your sister's wedding. I don't even know that I said, you know, but I probably did. And I had like a dress picked out and everything. Yeah. So that kind of sucked. So then, yeah, I was pregnant in the next time, missed the wedding and whatever. And they like asked me like, oh, are you pregnant? Like in the meeting. And I was like, yeah. And it was just, yeah.
Ugh. How did it feel? So were they the first to know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that probably didn't feel good, did it?
No.
And so after that, the cat's out of the bag. Do they tell other people, or do they keep that under wraps?
Oh, you know, I don't know, because all we had to do was tell the big B, his older sister, and did no worries, you know, that was out there.
So being pregnant and disfellowshipped, did they like what did your mom, did she still stay away?
Yeah.
Did she have anything to do with you? She's still just complete shunning.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're just being good Jehovah's Witnesses, right?
Right. After everything they've witnessed for themselves, with how, you know, my husband was at the time, or just all the different stuff, you know, like you think once you're doing what they want you to do, they would be like a little bit nicer about stuff, or like try to help you and support you. Like,
No,
you know,
they got to hammer that home. And they got to make sure that you feel like such a piece of garbage that you would never think of leaving them again.
Yeah. So it wasn't too long after, I wasn't like too far into the pregnancy though that I like got reinstated. And you know, whatever, life goes on. And the big B, like, I feel like she felt obligated to like have a shower for me and stuff, and it was just all very super awkward because I don't know how long it was in between, but I had built a little bit of a community through people that I met through like the workout class and stuff. And, you know, when I was out, my husband was fine spending time with those people and stuff. But then when you get back in, he expects you to like just totally be like, you know, shunning them and like a piece of shit to them. And I said, like, I'm not going to do that to my friends, and they're going to be my friends. Like, these people were here for me during the hardest times ever. And like, I'm just not going to do that, you know? So some of my friends that I was close to, I invited them to my baby shower or whatever. And so, but like, you know, newly JWs and like, you know, my lovely sister-in-law and all these people are going to be there. And my other friends, you know, so-called worldly people, as they say, or whatever, which just makes them wise or whatever. It was, oh my gosh, but I skipped over. I just skipped over everything, not everything, but I was just barely pregnant when I got reinstated or whatever. But then shortly after that, I was barely pregnant that long, and I ended up like measuring small and having a super complicated pregnancy. Like, I felt fine, but my doctor wanted me to go to a follow-up visit, and I went to the specialist, and I never left. They put me in a wheelchair and wheeled me to the hospital, and I never left the hospital until my son was born. And so it was like a 4-month like ordeal. It was horrible.
Oh, wow. So your baby shower was after the baby came?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds like a very, very rough pregnancy. So you spent 4 months in the hospital?
Right. I had to be there 2 months, and then they had to take him by C-section because his heart stopped for 5 months, and then he was 5 months. His heart stopped for 5 months, 5 minutes, and then he was in there for 2 more months. So I had to stay there because he was in the NICU.
Wow.
Yeah. So, in the midst of all this, like, it was just it's stressful being pregnant and disfellowshipped, and then super stressful because I felt like I was barely pregnant, and then I was in the hospital being told I have this rare condition, and then like all these relationships are like awkward or whatever. And I'm there, obviously I was bedridden, whatever, I couldn't leave. So I was there, and it was like during the day, nobody else was around, and 2 elders from my judicial committee come in there, and they ask me if the baby is my husband's.
Ah, gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, this is unbelievable. First of all, like, I go through the whole meeting with the interrogation, you know, to get reinstated. If you had any doubts about it, or that was some kind of issue of any sort at that time, like, why wouldn't you know, you know? I thought, you know, Jehovah speaks to you and tells you. Wouldn't Jehovah let you know?
Yeah.
I mean, just something, and it was so like, I was already under so much stress, and I just felt like, you know, and I'm just like, oh, this is nice, you know? how lovely is that? You're going to come and ask if the baby is his? I'm like, unbelievable. I mean, they asked me the questions and I hadn't been with the dude and whatever, unless they didn't believe me, which if they didn't believe me, then why did I get reinstated?
Right. Right.
And I just noticed too, like when I did like transgressions in the past or whatever, which was just the like sleeping together before we were married, it was like, well, because I was, trying to auxiliary pioneer or do more for the hall or whatever, that it was like water under the bridge. And it just seemed like, if I was willing to do more for the congregation and whatever, that it was just like, oh,
They could
but
brush it off.
yeah, they could brush it off more. But then it was like when I was in this situation, I was like a second time offender or whatever, that it was just like, then they needed to come and I'm like, well, basic math would tell you, unless you didn't believe me, which if you didn't believe me, well, then why was I reinstated? But yeah.
Yeah.
And, wouldn't you know that it was the people that weren't in the organization that like brought me food other than like hospital food, and did a lot of nice things for me. And like I remember the one friend that I first met at the exercise class, she like arranged for people to drop off meals at the house or whatever. It wasn't it wasn't the congregation.
Of course not. Of course not. So I have to know, when it comes time, and maybe you have more story along this line, but I'm just super curious to know what happened at the baby shower when the two, doth mix, when you have your worldly friends and your witnesses there.
Well, I'm going to teach you a little something called pump and dump, because I had drank so much vodka tonics, because I was so stressed out. I had to pump my breast milk and dump it out. I had to test it and dump it out because of the alcohol.
Okay.
No, it was very stressful.
I bet.
I was my friend, the mom of the people that I nannied for. She was just like, you need to calm down and blah, blah, blah. But it was like colliding of worlds, and it was very awkward, because you have the family members too that aren't, witnesses and never witnesses, like my dad's mother and stuff like that. And then all these people from my life. And I know that my sister-in-law, surprise, surprise, made some like offhand comment like, well, you must have really been doing a lot of stuff with these people for them to come here, know you so well or whatever. And, they got me like a really nice gifts too, like I think one of them bought like the crib or something,
Right.
And we're still great friends to this day. But it's almost like too, you get that vibe that like, how dare you thrive and make friends outside of the organization? It totally just feels like, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
I would love to know what I'll just use the term because it separates in this way, but I would love to know what your quote worldly friends had to say about the vibe at that party.
Yeah. Right.
That had to have been awkward for them too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I couldn't handle all the pressure. I remember that. I was like, a nervous wreck, pretty much, about the.
So where do you go after the party? Now you've got your child, and
well, I want to go back to the hospital for a moment, because there's just a few things that happened there. I realize now that the two brothers that came and asked whose child I was carrying is all because of litigation, basically. Because my child was at, like, most NICU babies need blood transfusions. So.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. So there was, a very, good chance or whatever. Not a good, yeah, a very high chance that he would need a blood transfusion. And so if something would happen, I suppose, or the baby dies or whatever, and it would come back or something, then they could be sued,
So in other words, if it
because
wasn't your
that wouldn't be like
husband's,
the dad's wishes, right?
right? So if it wasn't, ooh, that would be an awkward situation, wouldn't it?
Right. It was
Interesting.
totally about litigation, which I realize everything is about litigation
Got
in
to protect
JW
that
world.
money.
Oh my gosh, completely. It has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do with you can read, people's motives and their repentance or like whatever. They just don't want, to get their ass in a bind, when they kill a child. And
Pretty much.
yeah, exactly. Okay. So, I mean, that's way after the fact. I put the pieces together here. But so, as it would turn out, I mean, first of all, he was like super duper tiny and like only a pound and like 16 ounces. I mean, like a ring could go all the way up his arm. It was crazy. But he did, he's healthy and he came out breathing, and he didn't need like a whole lot else just to be like, in an incubator and just, keep growing. And they had to like, feed him through his umbilical cord longer and stuff. But of course, the blood issue came up, and he had a super low red blood cell count. And they send, the liaison committee that makes sure make sure you sign up to let your child die, basically.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at it now, as well, make sure you don't take blood and save your child. So but we just tried to be very careful, like in the amount of tests they took with the blood and different things. And but there was one point in it all where I thought, well, the hospital is just going to get a court order and they're just going to do it anyway. I
Mm-hmm.
sort of thought that. And I kept these journals of like when I was in the hospital or whatever. And there's the one about NICU. And I was like looking through them the other day. And a nurse had said to me, in the 16 years that she has been a NICU nurse, she never had a JW family faced with the choice of blood this severe or such a close call with a baby with such a low blood count. Yeah, so I just think about that now, and like everything I know, and like waking up, like just to possibly think that you could, you know, sentence your child to death or lose your child to death because of not allowing them to have a blood transfusion. And then you realize all the stuff about, the organization.
Yeah, that would be a terrible thing to wake up and realize.
Ah. But I think it's like, it's such a stressful situation in general. You kind of like, block out some of that. So when I was looking back at it, I was like, oh my gosh, I sort of didn't even realize,
Yeah, it was very
how,
severe.
how close it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, so we have the awkward shower. We bring the baby home, and, within a short amount of time, obviously the whole situation is very stressful. I think like if you're married to somebody that can't even handle, the responsibility as a husband, it's just not gonna work out well to like try to manage your way through like disfellowshipping, reinstatement, a kid in the hospital, and like all of the dynamics that come along with all the awkwardness. So it's like now I have two children, basically. Like, what have I done? And then um, we but well, I had jobs that were just like, there was no like maternity leave or anything. Like
Oh,
my
sure.
jobs were like working for people, like, independent contractor. It wasn't like I had time or whatever. And then we had a really great job um, of like doing these inspections, and that like got like bought out or whatever. And at this point, we had just moved into like a bigger place to like you know with the kid and whatever, and then like all this stuff like went south, like losing the job that we were making like a lot of money at or whatever. So we're in this new place and that happens, and so I'm like trying to figure out like how we're gonna make ends meet and whatever, and obviously feeling like I'm not getting um a lot of support at all from him, and like always, and he's just like in his own universe getting into like new hobbies and doing new things. And I tried like cleaning like in the evening and stuff, and that wasn't working. And at this point too, we had moved, the new house was in a new area, so we were going to like a new hall. And um it was like hard because it was just, I don't know, a lot of stress, and like having a new baby and trying to like manage it all and keep your kid quiet at the,
Hmm.
it just uh, a lot of challenges, and like not knowing anybody there, and like I just, you never really feel like you're totally forgiven and welcome back in a lot of ways either. You think like going to a new hall is going to help, but all halls like have their cliques, or like in this particular hall, almost everybody was like related, you know? And so they're so much like doing stuff with one another and in their habits of doing stuff with one another that it's like impossible to like, you know,
Oh yeah.
break into that circle at all.
Yeah, it's like crashing somebody else's family reunion. It's a very, very
Yeah.
awful time.
Yeah. And so I'm like, trying to say to my husband, like, what are we going to do? Or do you have any ideas and whatever? And I thought, well, I'm going to go back to like, I wasn't making much money at like cleaning at night and stuff. But then it's just like all that's hard, He's working during the day. I'm cleaning at night so that he's watching the kid at night and I'm there during the day with him. And then I'm like, I'm going to go back to like waitressing or whatever, because you can make so much more money,
Right.
and try to like get us on our feet or whatever. So that's what I did. And then it was just like, I felt like here I went out and like was trying to solve the problem and work a job. And actually, I was working, that was my second job, because I would bring my son along to like my nanny job because they let me do that or whatever. So I was still able to like do stuff for them and bring him along. So I'm like working with him and like, still obviously trying to do other stuff and take care of him, take care of the house, cook all the meals, do everything and anything, and then work this job at night. And I just wasn't getting like any like help whatsoever. Like I would say, can you at least like wash the bottles so that in the morning when I'm super tired, I can just grab it and fill it up and blah, blah, blah. And he like couldn't even do that. I would just like come home late at night from working and the house would be like trashed and the bottles would be like laying there. And I would just be like, I hate my life. This is horrible. Like,
Doesn't
this
sound like
can't.
there's much there for you.
No, it was
No.
awful. I was killing myself, like trying to do everything. Nobody was like appreciating it at all or whatever. And he was just like on to his next, like, gig or whatever of hobby, and like spending money, while I'm out like trying to make money to like pay stuff. It was just, I mean, it's just very much like having a kid and then having another kid and then trying to entrust your older kid to take care of the younger kid. And it's just a constant stress, like being a single mom, and then even stuff in the hall, like I would be like, have the kid and like have all the books and everything and like struggling, to like get it all. And he'd just be like, la, 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 like walking with like just an iPad or something, like light as a feather. And I'm like, if lasers could shoot out of my eyes and melt you right now, that's what I would do. Yeah. It was just horrible. Like just anything and everything. It's like if I didn't grab a jacket or remember this or remember that, it's just like I was getting no help in any way. And like it was just such a struggle. And like I would be in the back of the hall just crying my eyes out, or I was like so exhausted sometimes that I'm just like, I can't do it. Like I can't go. I'm too tired, or like this is just too much for me,
Yeah.
And I just didn't trust him ever to do anything because he just constantly proved his incompetence in every way. So even if like I told him to do something, I didn't trust him to do it correctly because he showed me a million times over that he's incapable of it.
So what is your path out of this situation? It sounds horrible.
Yeah. It was horrible. So I end up just doing something once, obviously. Well, I end up like sleeping with this guy once, like after work. It was just very, no, it wasn't work, like after work or anything. I had like met some people through my job or whatever, and I went out with people, and I was like put kind of like in a vulnerable situation where this girl left me and I had to like get a ride from somebody. And then it was just like, I had a little too much to drink and whatever. And I felt terrible about it. And I was just like, oh, I'm just like the worst person ever. I felt awful. And I think though that I just kind of like, for a while, I kept it secret, but I just felt so bad that I ended up, I'm just trying to think in the timeline. I don't want to forget to tell you stuff, but I felt so bad. So I ended up telling my husband, and he just doesn't really react that much or whatever.
So we know he doesn't always react like you think he's going to. And you were thinking
right.
If your husband had cheated on you.
Right. And you say like, I love you so much and whatever, that you would like fight for that person and not like, not keep doing the same things that you have been doing and try to listen to that person or, whatever.
But he wasn't interested in that.
Yeah. Or was like incapable of it all.
Yeah. And I think that's part of it. That's a big part of it.
Right. Motive and ability, perhaps, whatever.
Right.
But yeah, so I go to the elders and whatever, and it's just oh no, this happened. I think one thing that happened was before I ever went to the elders and confessed for my third and final time. He just, like I said, was like getting into things here and there, and I was like trying to write write him letters, and like I even at one point like took like all of his like hobby stuff that he was obsessed with. I asked like the owner of the restaurant that I worked at if I could bring them all there, almost like taking toys away from a kid for like a timeout, so that he could um be better and whatever. And yeah, so and some stuff too, like when
Were you hoping that he would work at the restaurant? Like if you brought his toys there, he would have to work in order to visit his toys.
Oh my gosh, well, he would have to change and listen to me in order to get his toys back. That's what I thought. I don't know, I tried everything. But he was very much too like, if I was playing something with my son, like he would come in and start like trying to copy me or do whatever. It was just like, or he would kind of like antagonize like our kids sometimes. And like everything is very much like, this is what I'm into, so of course you're going to be into it.
Right.
And like, I'm just gonna force you to be interested in this because it's what I'm interested in, or whatever.
Jehovah's Witnesses.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so that was all very tough too. I just felt like I was never seen or appreciated, for the stuff I would do. And then he would just like somehow turn it into like a selfish thing, like on his own or whatever. And he always like wanted to do stuff, like nothing was ever enough. Like he was never satisfied with anything. Like we were never doing enough stuff. We were like never having enough people over. I remember I had to work super late, and he wanted to we had this plan to like have, tons of people over like after the Sunday meeting or something. And I ended up like working Saturday night until like 3 a.m. So I didn't even go to the meeting, but then I had to make all this food and have these people over after the meeting. And I wasn't even at the meeting. And it was like so awkward.
Yeah. And infuriating.
Yeah. So, I was like, one of my last straws this last time around was I was sick once again, and he kept trying to say to me like, you're not sick. It's probably just a cold that I had like a couple weeks ago, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I really think I have like an ear infection or something. Like, I need to go to the doctor. And he was just like, oh, you don't need to go. And it was just very weird, which I'm like, if you're sick, why do you care if I go to the doctor or not? Whatever. But then I like felt guilty that I was going to the doctor. So then I like picked up barbecue on the way home while I was getting my prescription filled or whatever. And I had like no voice either. That's right. I like had completely lost my voice because of like being sick. And I come home with this barbecue after going to the doctor, and I had like double ear infections and something else. And I'm like, well, look at that. You're not a doctor and you can't diagnose stuff. But so I come home with this barbecue, and he's like, has our kid in the bathtub, and he's like super afraid of the drain. He was like afraid of the drain at the time. I don't know if that's like a thing that kids maybe go through.
I can imagine, like, where's all this stuff going?
Yeah, like you think you're going to get sucked into the drain. Well, yeah, I come home with this stuff, and he is like putting the drain in, letting the drain out, putting the drain in, and like our kid is just like mortified and paralyzed by fear. And I'm like, trying to say like, stop, like you're scaring him or whatever. And I like tap him on the shoulder, and he gets up and hauls off and just like hits me like super hard and like knocks me down, like, to the toilet. I think, like it took me like off of my feet. And I was just like, I'm done.
Yep, that sounds like a good place to end that, right?
Yeah. I'm just like, I'm completely done. I can't believe he just hit me in front of our child. And like, where did this come from? And what kind of monster has been like, underneath this person the whole time? I mean, I guess it's been there the whole time that he's just been like selfish and incapable. But I was like, I didn't even know when the last time like he ever hit me. Yeah. So then I'm just like, I'm totally donezo. So then we get to the point where I'm going to talk to these elders in this new hall and try to sum up an almost, 20-year marriage in like a 20-minute, discussion. But first they have to wait for my file to get there from the other congregation. So that's like good grief. It's like a novel, because it was my second time. I was disfellowshipped two times, and then this is the third time. But no, I just felt like basically I just totally felt like the decision was made before I ever even walked into the room. And even though nobody knew about it at all, and like I told my husband, and then I told the elders, like, and my husband and I both thought like I wasn't going to get disfellowshipped, because I'm like, how am I not repentant? And if I'm the one, bringing this to light, I could have just not said anything.
Right.
The entire time. So, and before this though, I was like so done and numb with my husband at that point. And I was just like, if I get disfellowshipped again, like, we're done, which I mean, I couldn't obviously grasp the total weight of that statement or what it's like to be divorced, but I was just totally done.
3 strikes,
like,
you're out. 3 strikes, you're out. This would be the third time,
right. And maybe this isn't for me. And I'm unhappy.
Yeah.
And you're unhappy, clearly, because a happy person doesn't act that way or whatever. Well, in the judicial committee, they're like basically blaming it on my job or whatever, that I had that late night job, and was I on drugs and whatever. And I'm like, okay, first of all, I took this job to help us make ends meet, because, how are we going to pay child care and other stuff? I have to work at night so that he could work during the day and whatever. And at that point I had become a bartender or whatever, but we're not, it's like, it's attached to like, which I'm going to give away a lot, I suppose, in a way, but it's attached to a family restaurant, and there's no drinking allowed there at all. And it's just like, that had nothing to do with it, like, but they have their assumptions and their mind made up in a way. And it was like, it doesn't matter what you say. But I'll never forget this elder saying, because of your past, we're going to have to disfellowship you.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'm like, what?
That shows a pattern, and that you are not repentant.
I'm like, what? Even though I'm like, that was years ago and whatever. And like I said before, it felt like if you wanted to do more for the hall, then it was like, we're going to brush it under the rug. But if you're like, I don't want to be in this abusive relationship or whatever, they're like, oh no, that's not how it works.
Jehovah forgives and puts your error as far off as the sun is from the sunset. I hate that I remember that scripture. And, that's what they would say about Jehovah, that he forgives and basically forgets, but Jehovah's Witnesses, they don't forget.
No, not at all. I kept thinking of like the scripture where Jesus says, like, how many times can you forgive your brother? Seven
Yeah.
times, 77 times, whatever. And
Yeah,
I'm
that's a
like,
good
well,
one
clearly
too.
there's a number.
Right.
I mean, I wasn't thinking that at the time, but that
Yeah.
just bothered me and bothered me and bothered me. I'm like, my past. What? Like, when you're reinstated, you're reinstated. You know, I'm like,
Nope.
I do not get this. If it's supposed to be about repentance, I didn't keep doing it. Like, you know, it wasn't it was just crazy. So then, of course, it's even more complicated to a certain degree to be disfellowshipped and have a kid. And be in that situation. It was just very hard. And I just kept thinking, like, okay, what am I going to do? It's like you can't even think that you have like any options, because they tell you, you know, like, it's up to him. He's the victim. He gets to decide whether or not you stay together or not. And then everything's like, oh, he hits you. That doesn't matter.
Right.
You know, he has total, like, you know, whatever issues. He's not a grown up. He's not a head of the house, whatever. All that doesn't matter. Oh, and then they say too, like, in the judicial committee, well, we noticed that you were depressed. And I'm like, well, thanks for noticing
Then why
and
didn't
not
you try
doing
to help?
anything about it. Oh my gosh. It's like the memes when somebody's drowning and they just, like, you know, throw a brick at them or something. I was like, gee, thanks.
Right.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So after that, I was just like, what am I going to do? How am I going to do this? Now I have a child. And I literally had to just, like, keep saying to myself, like, I'm an adult. I can do what I want to do. And, like, how do I want to raise my kid? And, like, I've been, like, handling money from the get-go. I will just start having to, like, you know, tell him what he needs to do, and we're going to have to start, like, separating it and whatever. But all of that was, like, obviously super traumatic, and he didn't want to do it at all, get divorced or anything. And even, like, I had went out and got, like, the divorce papers first and started filling them out, and then he wanted to do it, like, jointly, like, just like it was a pride thing or something, you know, at some point. But he really didn't want to have to, you know, get divorced and find somebody else to be his slave or whatever.
I mean, he's got it pretty sweet. He doesn't have to do anything. And,
right.
I mean, like, why would it seems like he was just kind of resigned to what was and wasn't looking for anything else. He doesn't seem like he was really looking for anything other than a hobby.
No. Yeah, very much so. Very much so. So, and I tried to, I had to, like, write down a bunch of things for him and try to explain, like, you know, how to do, like, basics, like, stuff like laundry, and help him to the extent I could or whatever, and try to work that all out on her own or whatever. And I didn't want to go, like, too far away or whatever, with, you know, having a small child or whatever. And I wanted to, like, keep him in the area, but it was just all very much, like, you know, doing everything on my own and not having, like, any support. I do have one sister, that I have gotten, like, closer and closer to, that kind of, faded away. So she did help me tremendously. I mean, it was like her and I, for a lot of it, moving out of the house and whatnot. But it's just crazy how, like, you feel so, like, trapped that you can't even think you, like, have any options, and, like, this is your life and you have no other way, and that's all that, you know.
Yeah, it's resignation. You
Yeah,
just
even
become
like,
resigned to what is, and you don't think that there's anything else that can be done. You have no way out of. I mean, you're actually doing the thing that is the one way out of the marriage for Jehovah's Witnesses. You know what I'm saying? And still, it's
mhm.
like there's still a resignation to, well, yeah, of course I'm going to, stick this out. Um,
Well, and it's a hard thing too when it's like everything is put on you, and that's
yeah,
the way it is all the time. Like he puts everything on me so that he can blame it all on me and not take any accountability for anything, and everything's my decision. And how much easier is it then to like, like when you just don't even want people to ask something of you because then you have to say no. It's
right.
just like, yeah. But then, like my mother saying to me, like, what are you going to do? And blah, blah, blah. Like, uh,
You're going to do the same thing you were doing without one kid, with one less child.
right. And it's like the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results. And I remember saying to my mom, like, clearly, this is not for me. Like, you know, I have to.
So now at the time, obviously, you're talking this relationship is not for you. Um, you haven't exactly had wonderful experiences in the congregation. So how do you get from there to talking to me today? In other words, how do you get from this point where the marriage is dissolving? Because that's that wasn't about you not believing that Jehovah's Witnesses have the truth. So how do you get from there to actually starting to wake up and yeah, because you're in a point right now where you're moving on with your life physically in some ways as you're moving out, but how does it go to where you're actually truly moving on in so many other ways as well?
Well, like a lot of things had bothered me along the way. Like, um, I always thought like beards were weird. I always thought that that you can't have beards. Not that beards are weird.
Yeah, I say
The fact
Jehovah's
that
Witnesses
you,
think the beards are weird too.
yeah, no. The fact that you can't have beards, to clarify,
Yes.
I always thought that was very strange. And I'm like, why is in every publication we imitate Jesus in every way except for the beard? Like, what is that all about?
Right.
And just how people were like so gossipy, and just like even the dysfunctionality of like my whole family. And then I was at the hall for the tight pants Tony talk, and I was like, okay, first of all, they're not even Spanx. You don't even have the word right,
Oh,
you
I
know?
thought the same thing.
And I'm like, are we really talking about patterned socks?
Yes.
And that women can't wear exercise pants, which you're not even calling the right name, but let's rely on you for all the other great information. Um, they can't wear them to the airport. They can't wear them, out. And I'm like, what do I do when I'm going to work out? Like, I worked out all the time. Like I said, I met
You
somebody.
wear baggy pants and you change at the gym, and your gym has no one of the opposite sex present.
Yeah, right. It's like you got to wear those stripper pop off pants. They're really baggy over. And then only when you get into class and you got to be in a dark, dark corner or something. I mean, it's just like, give me a break. I was so like upset because you can just tell like he's a smug, evil individual.
Oh, yes,
Like,
I agree.
I was like, I can't believe how you're talking. Were you not out in service? You have blood on your hands, blah, blah, blah. And I'm just like, what the? Like, this is crazy.
He likes to talk about people being cooked like hot dogs at
I
Armageddon,
know.
too. He's a lovely individual, isn't he?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. How he talked about like COVID-19 now too. I like that is just ridiculous. Oh, it's no surprise. We expected this. Oh. I'm like, wow.
Yeah. So was that a big pivotal moment then for you waking up to it?
Well, I would say these are like, cracks in the
Yeah.
way, and like being disfellowshipped and the stuff that goes on and how people act, and they don't like forgive you when you come back, and you feel like very much like that final like judicial committee. I'm like, are they thinking about how the family should stay together? Is like disfellowshipping me going to keep the family together? How is that going to help our child? Like, what what are they thinking about here? Like, I just remember saying all that, and then him saying, and it just like brings back everything else. Like, my sister-in-law was super inappropriate for an elder's wife. Like, just all this stuff that happens in your life, and you're like, this is not right. This These are not good people. This is not helpful. This is not how it's supposed to go. So, um and I really wanted to like just be out, have a restart. Like, I was just like, no matter what, I need some time away, some time apart, and I need to figure this out because clearly this is not working. Um and like how I wanted to raise my child
Hmm.
and whatnot. So I was just like a late night after work in my apartment, and I was like scrolling through Facebook, and I somehow came across this video that was like a Dateline report, and it had a child sex abuse case, and then they interviewed Barbara Anderson, and her talking about how she wrote, for the society, and there was an awake about how to help victims of child abuse, and that they got all these articles in about how all these children were abused, by Jehovah's Witnesses. And I was just like, it just opened a can of worms, and I just couldn't stop reading and looking up stuff and find out about the Australia Royal Commission, that they were like part of the UN, and then at some point, I read the whole, Elder's Manual, and I was like, well, now I know why I was disfellowshipped. And I felt so like wronged. And like, I just sat and told my personal sexual life and details to, 3 Joe Blows, a plumber or whatever, and like that have no degree, no marital counseling abilities, no whatever. And here it's just based on this manual that's a secret. I'm like, how can people play by the rules if they don't know the rules?
That's why they're secret rules.
I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's a cult.
Mm-hmm.
It's a cult. It's toxic. None of this stuff makes sense. And then like the more you learn, like I remember like back in the day that I always thought like when they went to like contributions that like, oh my goodness, it must be, they must have the right religion.
Well, that's what they said.
When they can all go on contributions. And then I was like reading this whole thing about how this like televangelist got sued because he wasn't paying taxes on this literature. So that's why. And I'm just like,
Scientology as well.
is anything real? I'm like, there's like not one single redeeming quality. And then I'm thinking like, I mean, the whole thing, how they didn't like let people get like organ, transplants, and then they allowed part of the blood, but there was like 1 million people that died, in the meantime. And if they could have got like what they allow now, and I'm like, well, Tony, there's some blood on your hands, my friend.
Oh yeah, but we do know that organ transplants are clearly cannibalism. So,
oh my gosh, and
participate.
Right. Yes, I read all that
in the past. Yes. So all these things are just waking you up to the fact that basically for most of your life you had been lied to in many ways.
Right.
It's very disappointing, isn't it?
It's just, yeah, it's like, it's so hard to overcome that you've been like completely blindsided and done all these things thinking you were doing the right thing and trying to live your life. And it's built on, a house of cards or whatever. Like, it's just a total man-made religion. And you can't believe that you didn't see it and that you just bought into it. But then, too, you're like, surely, I'm saying to myself, surely, especially I thought my dad, like, I have to tell him, that they were part of the UN and, like, my parents are going to want to know this or whatever, because it was very complicated, the relationship with, like, they wanted to see their grandson, obviously, but not talk to me. So, like, I was meeting them, like, halfway, and they would just, like, take my kid for the weekend, and then I would get him back, like, on Sunday or whatever, meet again halfway, and then just take him back. But, like, I was starting to, like, wake up in this process, and at one point he said, like, to me, like, well, you're not going to meetings, or something, something like that, to that effect. And I'm just like, yeah, like, it was just not a good situation. Like, you're not going to the meeting, so you're not going to be in paradise or something to that effect. And I'm like, well, that's healthy to teach your, grandchild that his mom is going to die or whatever. That's
Which
great.
is why they should not have children, their grandchildren.
Right. Well, they do not anymore. And when I was first starting to figure it out, I did go to, like, a couple meetings. And I also want to say, like, none of the elders had ever reached out to me. I want to mention too that, like, they were supposed to talk to my ex about his behavior and whatever. That never happened. Well, he wanted to auxiliary pioneer, so of course he gets to auxiliary pioneer. But I went to a meeting with my son, and it was so hard because he, like, would, want to play with other kids and do other things. And I'm like, we can't. Like, it made it even more difficult. And I'm just like, none of that is obviously, and that was long before I read the Secret Elders Manual or whatever, but I'm like, none of this is to help a person get back or nope. to bring them around to meetings or whatever. And then, like I said, nobody had helped me the whole time. And in the midst of everything, when I was, like, trying to get my stuff out of the house and whatever, and get an apartment set up, they were, like, saying to my husband that he's going to get in trouble if we're in the same house while, like, we're divorced. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me right now.
That's crazy. But yeah, they don't care. I mean, we're just establishing the same facts over and over again. They don't give a shit. They don't care about people. All they care about are rules and following their rules. That's it. And they care about appearances, and they care about punishing people, and that's what they care about. There's no real help to be found there. It's just controlled. That's it.
Totally.
They just don't have anything else to offer. It's a shame.
Right.
It's a shame because so many people are being hurt by that. They're destroying families. They're destroying the lives of individuals. They're destroying childhoods. And in the end, what for? There's nothing there.
And so one of that it was hard, obviously, to go to the meeting with him as a kid and whatever. And then I went to one more meeting by myself. And like I said, no one had ever reached out to me. They didn't talk to my husband like they were supposed to, whatever else. As I was, like, leaving the Kingdom Hall, one of the brothers from my judiciary committee said, "Oh, Stephanie, it's so good to see you here." And all I said in my head was, "Oh, fuck you very much." And I'm just like, you know what? I'm never coming back. I'm like, clearly it is not for me. at all.
So you made the decision, then you're done. Were you still you're still disfellowshipped now, right?
Yep.
Okay. So what do you do? Do you just move on with your new life and you and your son just go and live?
Yes, we try to to the best of our ability. It was a very hard managing things with my ex. He was like not giving like my son baths, like just basic changing his clothes, like just being like very irresponsible. And one time I said to him, like, you have to do these things, like, and you have to take a class when you get divorced too about childcare and stuff. And he's like, well, you always did it before, so I said, well, I'm not here, so who's doing it now when he's with you? Like, it's just crazy. And it was more and more, it was just very hard to like manage he's going, he's in and I'm out, and it's one way here for my son, and it's another way when he's there and whatever. Yeah.
So then you've been out now for how long?
I think it was like maybe I want to say the summer of 2015 I got disfellowshipped.
We're close in time, in age being out. I left in September of 2015. So
wow.
So since then, 5 years roughly have gone by. What do you think are some of the impacts of your past life still, where it impacts you? Yeah, how does it impact you?
Well, when I was learning about everything, I was trying to share it with my family, and thinking that was going to be like I would be able to make them see the actual truth and the facts, and that was very frustrating and disheartening. Like, I wrote them this like 2-page letter, and I never even heard anything for a long time. And then I finally like reached out to my mom, and I'm like, did you even get the letter or whatever? And she's like, it was very hurtful and blah, blah, blah. But there was moments that I would like have some conversations with her, and while I was like on the phone with her, she would like be in agreement with everything I said. And she was like, that makes sense. And, you don't sound like you're irrational. And she would be like, are you happy now? And I would be like, I'm so happy. And, blah, blah, blah. But then it would be like, she would go back and get like plugged in again, to the Borg, and just like forget everything I just said. And I'd asked her one time, like, did you watch the Leah Remini special? And she goes, no, I discussed it with your father, but that would be all apostate lies. And I'm like, or she said it was all apostate lies. And I said, well, I thought you didn't watch it, so how can you know what it was when you didn't watch it? And I tried to say like it would just be like me telling my personal story or whatever, but she wasn't having it.
They don't want to know.
Right. And then one of the last conversations I had with her, like my opening thing was like, what is your hope? Do you hope to get into paradise? Mm-hmm. And Jehovah wipes from your memory that you ever had children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren? Is that what you're looking forward to? And she said no. And we had this like super long conversation, and they agreed to read Crisis of Conscience. Mm-hmm. So like 2 minutes later, like I was like, on Amazon sending it to their house. And I was like, I think they might be confused about which Brother Franz it is, but I'm like, I hope, that they will read this book or whatever. Well, as it would turn out, they wouldn't even open it up or anything. And then that was it. I'm like, everybody's on their own path, and I can't, I just can't keep this up or trying to do, things or whatever. But I'm learning. I'm trying to learn and create boundaries, let me tell you, because I helped my ex out so much, when his account was overdrawn and I would borrow him money, or I was still bringing him food and trying to do things, trying to help him out and be a civil person. But on the other side of that, I say, I worked at a restaurant for 7 years now. And he brought in his new, soon to be whatever, this person he was seeing with my friends that I lived with a year after I got out of high school. So my ex and his new, preemie girlfriend and my friends come into the restaurant that I work at, out of all the restaurants in this, more than 2-hour radius. And one day I was looking at my credit card statement, and there was an unusual charge. And I asked my husband what it was about, or ex-husband at the time, sorry, my ex-husband. And I'm like, do you know anything about this? And he's just like, oh, it was a electronic thing or whatever. And I could tell he was lying. Well, it would turn out that it was an engagement ring for this person that he knew for 64 days.
He bought it on your credit card?
On my credit card. And we were divorced for 2 years at this point.
Oh, hell no.
I don't even know how.
Wow, that is weak.
Is that not?
How can you even, as a man, feel like how can you have any self-respect? And
right.
Good grief. Wow. That is pretty weak. Wow. Okay. So I assume did he at least pay you back?
Yeah. He had to pay me back, and he had to pay me back money that he had owed me. And then it wasn't until after he was married and everything that he was trying to separate things more and get my name off the account
because
and whatever.
She wanted to.
Yeah, clearly. I mean, somebody has to do everything for him again or whatever. I mean, it's just.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And what's crazy is, at some point I had met somebody, and I was moving in with them. So I was letting him know that I was moving in, and I was going to try to get my son in a different school district that was a better school district and other stuff. And he goes, well, I'm not going to wait for you forever. I'm going to find somebody. And it was that very weekend at a convention that he met this girl. If that tells you.
All right.
If that tells you anything.
Well, I mean, whatever the case, ultimately, you hope everybody grows up and finds finds something better, gets healthy, maybe leaves someday and finds, as witnesses would term, the real life, hope someday they get out and actually find life.
Right. Yeah. So it's just,
God,
it's just been
just
navigating what?
I said, that's just a miserable existence, living that the life that he has does not sound happy. It sounds very miserable, honestly.
Right.
Um, I'm glad that you are out and that you can find the life that you want for yourself and for your son. And that's what it's all about, moving on and finding things that are good for you and that make you happy.
Yeah, so when I was going to get married, I was like, this is just a whole different world and a whole new thing. And I'm like, I really need to start reaching out to like all of my dad's family that are in the area and telling them, why my parents won't be at my wedding, and building a new group and family in my life. And you know yeah, so that has been that's been awesome. And it's just amazing too when you tell the truth and you explain to family members what's happening. My parents certainly did not like hearing it, back from any family members or whatever, because they just think you're never gonna speak out and you're never gonna say anything. Like,
Yep, that's what they want.
Yeah, that's what they want. It's just never about getting healthy and creating a new life. They just want you to feel guilty and miserable, and how dare you, and when they're called on the mat for like their actual behavior, it's just, yeah. So I'm just so glad to, like, I reconnected with my mom's sisters that were disfellowshipped, and like reconnecting with all this family now, like all these people that are wonderful, and that I can completely stop the cycle with my son, and that he can live his life and be normal. And I know you don't like the word like unconditional, but not just be loved and pursue your own thing, and live your life and not have to worry that anything you say and do could take away your parents' love and, feelings for you or support for you.
Yeah. So that's awesome. So those are some things you enjoy about your new life. Are there any dreams you have? Anything that you're wanting to do in your new life?
I do wanna. I feel like I have this like a sense of justice like inside of me, and like I can't stand when people are treated unjustly and things happen. I want to try to help people. I want to keep learning, possibly go back to school, but just really be there for my son and just be a whole person, be real, like live my life guilt-free and explore any possibilities.
No, that's kind of living the dream, right? You just exploring, for a lot of us, it's hard for us because we didn't have dreams as Jehovah's Witnesses. Our dream was handed to us from the time we were a child. It was to live in the panda paradise, and
Right.
that's what everything was leading up to. And you weren't even really supposed to speculate too much on the paradise. But now you can have your own life. You can experiment with things. You try things out. You find the things that you like, the things you don't like. Continue going down the path of the things that you do enjoy in life. Find out who you are and what is a good fit. Like you said, you have a strong passion and sense of justice. So, in time, through trial and error, we find things that fit who we are, and we are able to take those things and make them part of us and really find a lot of joy in those things. It's so much better than trying to spend your entire life trying to find joy in something that you never really chose and that was kind of a default that was handed to you from the time you were a child, and that you were, uh, you're trying to fit the square peg into the round hole your entire life.
Right.
That's exhausting and leads to depression and anxiety. So it's so much nicer to be able to actually have the freedom to be authentic and just to even figure out what is authentic to yourself.
I just want to share one thing too. I reconnected with my dad's mom, my grandmother, for a bit before she ended up passing away last year. And she was a big letter writer, and I shared with her, my experience with Jehovah's Witnesses and what was happening in my life. And the last letter I got from her, I just want to share part of it with you. I mean, it's not that long of a letter, but it's just, to me, it's interesting, like the perspective of somebody, when your whole family is raised a certain way, and then like, my dad leaving when he was 18, 19, whatever he was, and like how much that affects the whole thing, and then you're never involved with any of your family that aren't witnesses, because you can only do stuff with witnesses. And like I was saying before, it's just all by design. So you don't have a support system. But I was so glad to have the opportunity to spend some time with her and do things with her before she passed. But this was her last letter to me. She said, you need to know how much I admire your courage and your decision making. I love the bouquet. Some of my favorite flowers are included. I got her a bouquet for her birthday. And then she said, when your dad first came to me in the kitchen and told me what he was going to do, I have done all in my power to stay civil in my actions. I helped financially when they asked. I never questioned anything about the history or the building of Kingdom Halls. In fact, your dad would ask me if I would come to see the building. I felt super bad that I was not invited into your girls' lives, so I kept still and tried to forget the pain. I prayed that your mom would not tell you girls about the fact that we were not acceptable. I tried hard to be friends with your mother. However, that never really worked. I had always talked to my boys about how they treat others. I did not say anything rude about the witness program. I am hoping your dad will remember that teaching and honor your decision. If not, you will always have all of us to recognize your needs and give you support and love. Thank you again for including me in your life. Love your grandma. I just thought, like, it's such a good letter. It's so well written, and like, they don't know, so much is hidden from people about the truth of Jehovah's Witnesses, but it's not hard. You don't have to know much to feel like you're not acceptable, like she said,
Yeah, I think we should let Grandma there have the last word. I think that she pretty much summed it all up right there, didn't she? I mean, that's what Jehovah's Witnesses do to families. They destroy them. The beautiful part is that you were able to get out and to reunite with some of that family. And I think it's also beautiful that your grandma was able to see the strength and the courage that it took for you to do that. And she could appreciate that. And I mean, what more can you say, right?
Right. I just hope for everyone to go and live their best lives and not like live the mistakes that they made for the rest of their lives. I especially feel bad for people that are like mentally in and physically out. It's just like everyone's imperfect. Everyone makes mistakes, but you can't live in that place. Yeah, I just want everyone to be happy. Witnesses, not witnesses. My ex-husband, his new wife. I just wish the best for people.
As always, I want to thank everybody that's brave enough to get on here and tell their story so that they can help those that listen. And I hope that in listening back to it, you get a different perspective and can give a little more weight to what you experienced and find some more healing. If you're listening, you can support today's guest by leaving a comment of support on the website at shunnedpodcast.com on the episodes page. While there, you can find the date for the next Shunned Recovery Project online meetup, reach out for one-on-one coaching to get moving on your new life, or buy some merch and rep the show. Visit my other site, xjwhelp.com, for helpful videos and a downloadable roadmap of life after leaving, as well as resources like meetups, books, and a lot more. Join the Facebook support group called Shunned Podcast. Find us on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and more as Shunned Podcast. Leave a review on iTunes or other podcast apps for both this and the original podcast, This JW Life, so that more people can find these stories and get the help that they need. Donating equals loving. So if you love these stories and find them helpful, please support the show at patreon.com/shunned. And there's some rewards there, and it really means a lot to me to see that people support what I'm doing, and it helps me to do more. The theme song for today is No Hell Yet by Fair Voyeur. And as I end all episodes, love others, do no harm, and go be happy.
Your curse God